Thanks. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to the planning board this evening. Thanks for coming on out and spending some time with us. I know there's a few issues that are going to come up tonight. Just a few things that are part of the schedule that we want to talk about here. Let's see. Let's go to the short form. Because there's a few withdrawals. There's something that's going to get moved up front, and I just need to find my notes here. So, just kind of running down the list very rapidly, when we get into our A&Rs, number 7987, which is the town of Nantucket, Henry Street and Hulbert Ave. This is going to be an item that wasn't anticipated by the chair within 48 hours worth of time, but we will be considering it. On tertiary dwellings, there's one for Sharon L. Hubbard, which is going to be continued to 7/11/16. For public hearings at this point, Valero Road subdivision, number 7716, that's continued till August 8th. Number 1615 is going to be continued to August 8th as well, too. That's Brotherhood of Thieves. Number 7946, Stephen M. Waterhouse, that's going to be continued to August 8th as well. If anyone's here for the Nantucket Theater Project, number 28-16, that was going to be withdrawn. And Andrew, I'm sorry, what was it?
Mr. Chairman, there's no relief necessary for that. The accommodation is being met inside the building, and the board just needs to clarify that in its withdrawal vote.
Great, thank you. And one other thing is under their business, 40B 106 Surfside Road. There's some comments there to be due. We're going to move that as soon as we get done with just voting on our minutes. We're going to move that to the front of the agenda. People have got to be off island shortly, so we're just going to kind of take that out of turn at the moment. So, anyways, with all those changes that we've talked about.
I'll make that motion to approve the agenda.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Motion's now made and second for discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Minutes from May 9th. Are there any errors or omissions as submitted? If not, I take a motion to approve said minutes.
I'll move to approve.
Thank you. And do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's now made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. So first thing before us is going to be, as we said, under business, which is going to be 40B 106 Surfside Road. I didn't hear that. No one said anything to me. Did you have something for us on that?
Is that me?
Yes, sir. Sure is, I believe. Oh, I'm sorry. It was Fog Island Cafe. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm sorry.
Amelia Drive.
I'm sorry. 1,000 apologies. Let's get to Fog Island Cafe. I completely spaced out for a minute.
Okay. Hi, my name is Mark Dawson. I own Fog Island Cafe downtown. We're opening up our establishment out of town at 5 Amelia Drive. We got the awning up and fully inspected, health, fire, and building. We'd like to do some plays this summer to do some fundraising, and just like your approval if we can do that.
Board members, do you have any comment on that? What? Fog Island. I've moved him to the front of the agenda. He's on the last page. It's a short and sweet thing. His request is very simple. It's not even what this. Okay. All right. Just trying to get everyone on sync here. I'm not really hearing anything from my board. I mean, I don't think it's anything terribly unusual.
I didn't think so. I mean,
yeah.
I'm just trying to be open where we're just trying to do some fundraising and so, a few plays and go on with our food and beverage business.
Yeah, no, I think, there's one member of the board. Good luck. And,
okay.
Excellent.
Oh, wait,
Thank you.
Supposed to vote on it?
Yeah,
No,
Mr. Chairman,
did you need something, Andrew, particularly on it, or?
yeah, we would just
Sorry.
like the board's concurrence, and I think we just heard it,
Yeah.
for our zoning enforcement officer.
Okay.
Because, and we're in agreement with you, we think, a thematic type of use of this is clearly accessory to the main use. They have approval as a restaurant. So we would just ask the board to agree that you find that this is an accessory use and there's no further relief needed.
Would you like an official vote for the ZEO?
Yes, please.
So moved.
Do I hear a
I'll
second?
second.
Discussion.
Mr. Chairman, are you taking public comment?
This isn't really a public comment kind of thing, actually, to be very truthful. This is it doesn't rise to that occasion. So, motion is made and seconded. Is there any further discussion by the board? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? There you go. Good
Thank
luck with things. Okay. So, next thing before us at this point are A&Rs. I think you've all had a chance to look through them at this point.
I would like to make one comment.
Is it one you want to isolate out
No,
and talk
no,
about?
it's not a
Okay.
comment about a project. I saw that Paul Santos stapled the check sheet on his projects, the A&R check sheet, to
Yeah.
show that the plan had all the elements on it.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty nice and a pretty good idea for maybe everybody to do.
I need to isolate one I cannot sit on.
Okay.
But other than that, I don't have any problems with that.
All right, good. Linda, which one do we want to pull out?
Molly Bigley, 7983.
7983.
I cannot sit on that.
That's okay.
Catherine, let it show that I'm recusing from 7983 Bigley, 20 York.
All right, so out of the 15 that we have at this point, and I'm not hearing anyone wanting to do anything else, let's try to approve the other 14 at this point, and then we'll deal with that one separately, okay? So I'd
I'll
love
make
a
a
motion.
motion to endorse a lot of them.
Yes.
7973 Gorham, King Street. 7974 Lifshitz at 3 Massasoit. 7975 Town of Nantucket, Railroad, or Central Road. 7976 Dimmick, 54 Bartlett. We have a lot of signing to do tonight. 7977 Wilsey at 33 New Street. 7978 Town of Nantucket, Woodbine. 7979 18 Mount Vernon, Poets Corner, 18 Mount Vernon. 7980 Richmond, Great Point. 7981 Richmond, Great Point. 7982 Rick Bodette, 40 Jefferson. 7983, oh, I can't do that one.
Yep.
7984, Habitat for Humanity off Tacoma. 7985, Town of Nantucket off Industry Road. 7986, Town of Nantucket, Pacoma. 7987, Town of Nantucket, Henry Street and Hulbert Avenue.
All right, that motion is made, and do I hear a second to it? Motion's now made and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it unanimously, and now we're going to go
I'll make a motion to endorse 7983 Bigley at 20 York Street.
Do I hear a
I'll
second?
second.
Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
And I'm recused.
Duly noted. So 4-0 with one recusing. Okay. Great. Next thing before us is you have 6 second dwelling reports at this point.
I can't sit on Williams, clearly.
Okay.
14 Marianne, I've recused from that.
Got it. Anyone wishing to isolate anything else out?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna vote against 97 Low Beach Road and 110 Tom Nevers Road.
Well, that's okay.
Because, I know you have enough people, but,
Oh,
Can
yeah.
you put on the record why, though?
because they were prepared by people that don't have the proper license.
We could have a policy meeting on that.
We're going to discuss that
Some
later on.
point.
We're going to discuss that
Yeah,
later
I
on.
saw the letter.
Yeah, we're going to discuss it later.
All right, so I'll take them one at a time.
You can do the first 3, actually.
Yeah.
Yes?
You pull out 97 Woolwich Road, one condition needs to be added to that one.
All right. So
I'm
that's-
just taking them one at a time anyway.
Yeah, so we're just going to totally, yeah, please, Linda.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve Louise Swift, 231 Matticat Road, per staff comments.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it unanimously. 97 Low Beach Road is now withdrawn for the moment.
Would you want to add the comment?
Or what do you want to do?
Had a condition to add.
Oh, okay, yeah.
With other second dwellings on Little Beach Road, the planning board has required
Devil that road.
a contribution to roadway maintenance or other pedestrian improvements in the area
Yeah.
because Little Beach Road can't be improved to the standard.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have that formula right now, but I would like you all to vote on us calculating that in accordance with the other second dwellings that have been approved on Little
So moved.
I'll second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
I'll make a motion to approve Mackie Davis at 45 Wilwinnet Road per staff comments.
And do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it unanimously. Next one, Harold Williams.
We'll make a motion to endorse, Harold Williams, 14 Marion Drive.
Okay, and do I hear a second to that?
Second.
Motion's now made and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I've recused.
I know you have, thank you. So that's a 4-0 with Linda recusing. Next thing before us, go ahead.
I'll make a
Linda.
motion to approve Graham Goldsmith, 1 Crow's Nest Way per staff comments.
Okay, and do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded for discussion, which we've already had some. If there's nothing further, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
I can't sit on Callahan.
I thought you were
I forgot about that.
in the negative on that.
I'm,
Was that-
yeah, Kelly, I'm negative, yes. I thought we were
Okay,
on
well, I
Crow's
thought it
Nest.
was, no, I'm sorry, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so go ahead, Linda, on the next one.
I'm recusing from Callahan.
Oh, you are? I didn't
Yeah.
realize that.
I forgot about it. It was on
Okay.
here.
Make a motion to approve, Mary and Robin Callahan, 10 Tom Meadows, for staff recommendation.
Okay, and do I hear a second to that? Motion's now made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Okay, with Linda recusing at this point. Okay, thank you all. Next thing before us are tertiary dwellings. We have 2 of them at this point.
I can't obviously sit on Williams again, but
Yeah, no, well, that, yeah, okay, so.
And one was continued?
We'll recuse you from that, yes, we will.
okay. I'll make a motion to approve Anthony Mazzotis at 29 Essex Road.
And do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. And on Williams?
Make a motion to approve, Williams, 15 Mary Ann, tertiary.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
And I'm recused.
Yep, 4-0 with Linda recusing at this point. Great. Next thing before us is previous plans, number 0912, which is Cape Cod 5 for performance security release. You have the staff recommendation here at this point. Is there any discussion on the issue?
Can we have a little discussion on this?
Yeah, absolutely.
What's going on here? We've been sort of hanging out with money for them from a couple of years ago.
We held about $23,000 in escrow for performance security of things that were not completed. The board may or may not recall that this whole project progressed with no engineering inspections at all because they didn't request them, and we had a substitute engineer at the time. So there's been a lot of review sort of after the fact with pictures and evaluating whether or not they did install what was supposed to be installed in accordance with the site plan. And Ed Pesci just recently did an inspection of the property and found that there were several outstanding items which aren't a big deal. They can be addressed fairly simply, but we do not request or we do not recommend release of the money at this time.
Informed that there are, what these outstanding issues are so they can address them once and for all?
I did send some correspondence to Chris Raber, who's with
Okay.
Cape Cod 5.
Mr. Reed, good evening.
Thank you. Attorney Arthur Reed, representing Cape Cod 5. I received the staff report through email and sent a copy of the relevant portion of this to Chris Raber of Cape Cod 5 over the weekend, and he responded to me. He had not seen the report at that point and indicated that he would be in touch with Leslie and with Ed Pesci as appropriate to try to deal with it. So I think under the circumstances we would request that this be postponed until the next meeting, and hopefully at that point the issues will all have been resolved.
Okay. Anything else?
I'll make a motion to continue to July 11th, is it, Catherine?
Yeah.
Second.
All right. Motion is made and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Reed.
Thank you.
Next thing before us is 56-15, which is Dave Fredericks on 7 Newtown Road. This is a minor modification at this point. ahead.
Mr. Chairman, the applicant was planning on coming forward with a Form J lot release at this meeting.
Yep.
But we have not yet executed the covenant.
Okay.
And much of the roadway work has already been done. It's been inspected by Ed Pesci. So at this point, I would recommend that you waive the covenant altogether, because that's really just paperwork that doesn't need to happen.
Okay. Board members, any
I'm fine with
questions?
that.
Any questions? Nope.
Motion to approve.
Do I hear a second? Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next thing before us is 3222 Oliver Estates. This is for Form J for lot number 2. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, the roadway improvements for the subdivision have been completed. Years ago they were completed, so we recommend release of the final lot.
Okay.
So
Board-
moved.
Thank you. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Next thing is 7803 Skiff Lane subdivision. This is a release of the escrow. Was there anything, Leslie, beyond what your report is?
No, actually, it's Holly's report. I'm just
Oh, sorry.
the speaker. So they were requesting release of their escrow account, $3,694.39. And I do want to just confirm with Holly that we don't have any outstanding bills from Ed Pesci. So if we do, we'll need to subtract that from that amount.
So moved.
Second. Yes, Mr. Lowell? Okay, thank you. All right. Discussion, I wasn't sure if you said something or not. I'm sorry. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Next thing is 7874 Millie's subdivision. This is an extension request for legal documents and endorse the plans.
Yes,
Hi.
hi, Don Bracken, the applicant, Don Dimick. We submitted all the plans for final signing and final review by Pesci in accordance with the conditions of the approval. We also asked for the extension for all the documents for the homeowners association, easements, and so forth. As you probably know, this property was just approved to be in the sewer district this past town meeting, so they delayed on doing any of the documents until then. So they're still not done. We're still actually working on the sewer design. So we'd like to ask for approval, or an extension, I should say, on the 6-month period for the documents, maybe for another 6 months if that's possible. And then we'd like to ask for a continuance on the signing of the plans until the next meeting so we can address, I think, what is one more concern from Ed Pesci.
Question.
Yeah?
Don, is the change from granite to concrete curbing and the move of the drainage to the other lot on this plan?
That is on the plan that Pesci has reviewed. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Anything else from the board? Not hearing anything, what's the pleasure?
So you want to go to July 11th?
Yes, please.
And I think, in the meantime, what you're looking for is not just to continue, but you also want to get a 6-month extension at this juncture? Is that?
Yes, only for the required documents.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
The applicant is requesting a change in the curbing material from granite to concrete. So if that's something the board has a concern with,
This is the time.
now's the
to-
time to
Yeah.
voice that.
Okay.
I'm not seeing anyone have any concerns with that.
Okay, I'll make a motion to continue to, I know there's another part to it.
Okay, good.
Continue to July 11th for the plan review and allow the 6 months extension.
Perfect. Do I hear it? Beautiful. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Opposed? It's 5-0 vote. 24 Fulling Mill Road. This is a modification to the second dwelling approval to modify requirement. Hi.
Good
Ms.
evening.
Alger,
Sarah
good evening.
Alger for the applicant. Pat Levesque, the builder, and Paul Santos, our surveyor, are here with me as well to answer any questions you might have. We're just asking that the secondary dwelling condition imposed at the time the secondary dwelling was approved be modified. It currently requires a road opening of 16 feet and height of 13. We're asking that that be reduced to 12 feet on curves and 10 on the straightaway. We've got wetland constraints there, as well as neighbor concerns about altering the character of the road. Mr. Levesque met at the site with Dave Shampoo and the chief. You'll see an email from the chief, I think, in your packet, recommending the 12-foot on the curves and 10 feet on the straightaway to a height of 12 feet.
Board members, any concerns, any questions? Just let me check with Andrew, Leslie, you guys good? Mr. Cohen?
Mr. Chairman, I represent an abutter and support the application in the request to reduce the road widening, but would make a request that the board require a surveyed site plan for this, with the notable point here that in a number of places the travel way encroaches onto private property, and that should be identified, and there should be no road widening on private property. I'd also request that the board require, or at least think about requiring, that mature vegetation not be taken down if it's avoidable. But really the primary concern is that no road widening should be done on private property where there's already an encroachment.
We don't have any rights to widen a road on private property, so we wouldn't be doing that.
Okay.
That's fine.
Will the road have to be relocated?
Nobody wants to change it, that's
No
why
one,
they're
no
here.
one wants the road relocated, even the people with it on the
We just wanna
private
leave it
property.
open.
Okay. Is that right?
That's correct. I mean, it's minor, but what they don't want is it increased.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that condition is absolutely fine.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve with that condition.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Next thing is Nantucket Westmore Farms LLC, 6 and 8 Westmore Farms Drive. This is for a covenant and restriction agreement and discussion. Mr. Dale, good
Thank you,
evening.
Mr. Chairman. Good evening. Kevin Dale, representing the applicant.
Catherine, do you have what they sent this afternoon? They weren't in our, Kevin, they weren't in our packets. They came in too late for the packets, but I saw it come into the office.
I represent Nantucket Westmore Farms, LLC. My client owns property at 6 and 8 Old Westmore Farms Road. The principal of Nantucket Westmore Farms, John Piles, is next to me today if you have any questions for him. The properties are located in the residential 20 zoning district. Commercial uses are prohibited in that district. Also, there are declarations of covenants and restrictions that affect these properties that are enforceable by the planning board that provide for no commercial uses. They're prohibited. My client's owned the property for the past 11 years and has held occasional special events and weddings that are incidental and ancillary to the residential use of the property. And the primary use of the property is, in fact, residential. Last fall, the zoning enforcement officer issued an enforcement order against Nantucket Westmore Farms, LLC, claiming that the special events, the occasional weddings up there, were commercial uses. That order was generated by an anonymous complaint. As far as I know, there haven't been any other complaints. This year, my client applied for some tent permits for occasional weddings and was denied, again by the zoning enforcement officer, based on his assertion that the uses up there, the special events, were impermissible commercial uses. It's my client's clear position that the uses are incidental, ancillary, and subordinate to the residential use of the property, which he uses, or the Piles family uses, extensively during the year as a summer seasonal place. And as I say, the special events are clearly limited and circumscribed. Even so, my client wants to be cooperative, wants to be a good citizen and a good neighbor, and is voluntarily offering a restrictive agreement, a restriction agreement, a deed restriction to impose on both 6 and 8 Old Westmore Farms Road, which would be registered at the Registry of Deeds and would run with the land and the property. This restriction would limit the number of special events per year. Specifically, it would say that provide that there be no more than 3 events that would use a tent greater than 150 square feet in area. It would limit the number of events between May 1st and June 15th to 3, between June 16th and August 15th to 3, to 4 between August 16th and Halloween or October 31st, And lastly, for the rest of the year, between November 1 and April 34, for a total of 17. A total of 14. We're here today to encourage a dialogue and a discussion with the Planning Board to see if you have any questions or concerns about this proposed restriction. My client would like to go forward and host weddings at the premises on an occasional basis, and also hold fundraisers for nonprofit entities, charitable entities that would benefit the island, and occasionally have a seminar there. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, and happy to hear your questions, concerns, or thoughts about this proposed restriction.
Board members? Go ahead.
Precise list. I know in your original there was a list, but I think you've tweaked it since then. I'm not sure if any of the new stuff has what we talked about earlier. Do I have a list of any of that stuff? Because we were talking
Do you
about
need a
changing it
cop-
from August 15th to September 1st, things
Right.
like that. I don't have an amplified music and all that stuff.
One of the concerns I thought might come up would be concerns about parking and amplified music and
Hours.
the number of events and things like that. And would like to hear your thoughts on that. Mr. Piles clearly understands that the scope of these weddings and special events should be congruent and conform to the residential area where the property is located. Would clearly agree to no parking on Old Westmore Farm Road for these events,
Or Pilgrim.
or Pilgrim Road. He, in fact, uses, I think it's Cranberry Transportation to have people out there.
Hours.
Look for reasonable hours. We'd ask for 11 o'clock, that events end at 11 o'clock. That there be allowed amplified music, but it would be subject to the Nantucket noise bylaw, and the decibel level of the music would be such that it would not emanate beyond the boundaries of the property, keep down. And that's primarily what Nantucket Westmore Farms is willing to do, unless you have other requests or concerns.
Go ahead.
There should be a responsible party on site. Even when we do dorms and things like that, there is a responsible person on site, with the neighbors being given the number of who that person is that's on site.
Mr. Piles is generally there when these things take place.
Or it doesn't have to be John, it can be
Yeah.
your designee, so long as there is a responsible party representing the property owner on site during the events, and that number is well known.
It's a reasonable request, and we'd happily comply with that request.
Going to 11 is still a great concern. I live really close, I told you this afternoon, to a wedding venue in the Badlands where you can hear a pin drop at night. And I know every single couple who's ever gotten married because of the amplified music. I know every toast that's ever made because I can hear it all night. They're done at 10. Period. Done at 10. Now, I understand you also have, they can rent your place to stay in your place,
Right.
as well as having the venue there. I'm a little concerned about allowing it to go to 11 because the other, Elliott had to close down at 10. Jacques closes down at 10. There's quiet people there. So I think there's two different things happening. People being there till 11 and no amplified music or noise after 10. And I know we've done it before. Andrew?
Mr. Chairman, through you,
Yeah.
while I appreciate the concerns, I think that there's a critical difference here. The Westmore Farm is a commercial-type operation, and this is an accessory use, and really an accepted standard accessory use of a residential property. We're starting to stray into a strange area here.
Yeah.
We don't put these kind of restrictions in a residential subdivision. So I think you ought maybe to get to the central question first. It's really up to the town to put licenses on the timing and the noise and the police function and other things. I think why this was cited was there maybe was some marketing and some other things that maybe brought it over the line. But I think, in general, residential homes are allowed to have parties. Any of you can have a party at your house occasionally. And I don't know where you're going with this condition as part of a residential covenant. I mean, I think covenant is certainly generous, but I don't. This is very unusual.
So
I appreciate that. However, it is a resident completely, except for Westmore Club, which predates every house up there. It is a residential zone, and we have to come to some sort of a détente between the people that were sold those lots that have Old Westmore Farm as their access. So obviously no parking at Old Westmore Farm, and those who live around it who are residences. If we're being asked something, I guess, from the ZEO's point of view, if we're being asked for a covenant or restriction agreement or some such thing, then I think it's highly appropriate to put conditions on a commercial business that is didn't operate before, in the middle of a residential zone. I have a concern about that, and I don't think asking Amplified Music to stop at 10 is a big problem.
So let's
Going to
get-
11 is, a different issue with just people
Just to
hanging
clarify,
out.
not to interrupt, but this is a residential use,
Thank
and any special event like a wedding is ancillary and subordinate and incidental to the residential use of the property. This is not a commercial use.
Can I ask one question?
There's been some
Are you done,
disagreement
Mr.
about
Dell?
that.
Hold on.
I'm
You
done.
done, Mr. Dell? Thank you. I wanted to give you your time. Go ahead.
I mean, I don't understand what the subdivision, what's going on exactly. But suppose if a person lives there, owns a house, they could rent it out to someone for a week. That person could have a wedding.
Yes,
Then the next week, they could rent it to somebody else. They could have a wedding.
yes.
Third, and so on for the rest of the summer. That would be, and you would call that not commercial.
I would call that an ancillary,
See, I
incidental,
would think of
subordinate
that
use.
I would think of that as commercial.
There's
But
been a lot of arguments.
If I may. But Andrew, if I'm correct, they still have to go to the town.
Nope,
No?
For the large
To-
tents.
just the tents.
There you go.
Right,
Nothing
and
to do
there's,
with the barns.
I understand what people think it is, but it's not defined that way right now in the bylaw. And there's no difference from other residential homes, whether they're in this subdivision or not, if they have weddings at different times. It's the tent issue that, why that change was made at town meeting was to limit the number of those, which was done. And I think, a simple covenant that limits, where they're offering to limit that, because I guess there's a building that lends itself to this, so.
Yes, yeah,
So there might not always be a tent?
that's correct.
So I think that's okay. But I think, again, in every residential subdivision, are you now going to be putting that condition on?
This is not the same thing. As casual, like they rented my grandparents' house like once or twice a year for a wedding in the front yard, but they rented the house too. Fine, whatever. This is taking on like we had the same argument with Elliot. It was taking on a quasi-commercial wedding factory kind of thing. And I just know that in my neighborhood, he stops at 10 because of the noise, and that's just what he does, because then we start at 10:01, we start calling the police.
But
But,
go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, again, I don't see a, quote, wedding factory with what's been provided, which talks about, I think it's 2 weddings in May,
I can't quite get
2
that.
weddings in June, no weddings in July,
September's a big month.
no weddings in August, and 1 wedding in September. That seems fairly,
But is that what he's asking for? But I thought they were asking for 4 in September That's what I'm saying. We're getting confused
All right.
about the number of weddings. When?
9 weddings.
All right,
just-
but let's be clear.
Can we just get that clear?
Hold on, Mr. Dale. Please recite the schedule back.
Thank you,
So
Mr.
the
Chairman.
board is completely clear and all of our members. Thank you, sir.
Happy to do so. The special
appreciate it.
events would be 3 between May 1 and June 15. 3 between June 16th and August 15th. 4 between August 16th and October 31st. And then finally 4 between November 1 and April 30 for a total of 14.
Can I comment just on that one thing?
I'm just I'd like a turn here for a second. The barn is part of the residential property. It's
There are
not
two
part-
structures.
That's
Am I
right.
correct? Okay.
You are correct.
So there's really nothing entering into this equation that is commercial in any way, shape, or form. Am I
That's
correct?
totally correct.
Okay, good. Because I'm listening to staff, and I'm afraid that the territory this board is starting to turn itself toward is creating its own unique set of principles here tonight for its first time that would be applicable. We're going to have to do this for every residential property in order to be fair. I don't think you can just single them out and say that this is something that's unique to them. I think you've tried to come forward to address some issues that were probably brought up by the ZEO, which, strangely enough, I'm beginning to feel maybe because there is the commercial aspect real close to where you guys are, but it's two separate entities.
That's correct.
And was he able to identify anywhere that in a residential that you needed to have certain restrictions?
No,
Okay.
he was not. In fairness to the zoning enforcement officer,
Yes, sir.
I think and I don't want to speak for him,
I
but
understand.
he was concerned about marketing on a web page whereby Nantucket Westmore Farms has its own web page that lists, along with the residential uses, occasional weddings, and Mr. Piles is quite willing to back off and mitigate and modify and make it very clear to the whole world that Nantucket Westmore Farms properties are residential.
Great. And
So I think that
now all of a sudden I can see where the quandary may have occurred at,
Yeah.
personally at least. So I think, just let me finish what I'm going to say. Just personally, as one member of this board, I think with you removing that, I think all of a sudden you've cleared the air. There are now two distinct things going on. There's what you do in your commercial property, there's what you do in your residential property. That's my feeling. Thank you. Go ahead.
I think it brought up to you earlier today about going to September 1st as opposed to August 15th.
Is that all right with you, John? Yes.
So then it would be September 1st to October 31st,
Right.
Shifting that. Okay.
Right. There's no
Hold on.
intention to have big events there during August, which is, I think we all agree, is a high season.
Yep. Leslie, go ahead.
I'm not done.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So what you've given us is no parking in Old Westmore Farms
That's right.
or any roads outside of their property. You've given us hours to 11 o'clock. Is that what you gave us? Somebody's going to be calling you at 10:01 because there's amplified music. Just beware. And you're going to have a representative for the property owner
Yes.
on site during the events.
Yes.
You can't specify who. And you've gotten the number of events down. Was there anything else that you had in your letter?
We'd like to be able to, in the restriction that we're proffering, we'd like to be able to exclude single-day fundraisers for nonprofit and charitable entities from the limited special events. For example, Nantucket Film Festival, Mr. Piles hosted for free an event for them last year. It was very successful, and it's a nice venue for that kind of thing.
Are these all going to be 501c3s? Is that
Yeah.
what you're saying?
Yes, they would be. Or 501(c)(3)(7)s, but who's getting picky?
Yeah. A 501 something.
Is there anything else you have?
And was that it that was in this one?
Yeah,
Okay.
and I'd be happy to modify the restriction to conform to these conditions if that's the pleasure of the board.
Okay.
Leslie, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, we're concerned about your jurisdiction on putting these types of restrictions on. I mean, the reason why the zoning enforcement officer suggested that this matter come to the planning board is to make a determination, is this commercial or is it ancillary residential? And the reason why that should come to the planning board is because in the subdivision restrictions, you have the right to enforce against commercial activity because it's in a residential zoning district. So if you find that what they're doing isn't commercial, then that should really be the end of the conversation. I don't know where all these restrictions are going to go. I mean, there's not an application before you for this particular site.
Except that he's offering these. Does that make a difference if he's offering to put these in a restriction?
I'm actually afraid he's not just offering, we're negotiating.
No, he offered it as well.
No, I'm sorry, respectfully, we're sitting here at this table negotiating it here at the moment, and I think that's beginning to take on a whole different context. As one member of this board, I am really concerned with where we are tracking with this. I can understand the confusion again from the CEO based upon this perspective of you were marketing this through a commercial site, which you have now clearly identified that was just a plain old bad idea, and you won't be doing that again. And I hear that loud and clear. But I think anything else, we're heading into some territory as a board that is of really some great concern to me, which I think, there's enforcement issues that are going to be brought up at this point. How does this interact with other places like the police department and stuff? Are we going to start doing this whenever it pleases us as a board for these kind of things? I hear staff, and I'm on their side. I am greatly concerned with the direction and velocity that we're traveling with here.
So the conditions that he put in that
Let
letter,
me turn to Mr. Vorse.
we don't have to take.
Excuse me. I'm turning to Mr.
I don't get
Vorse,
it.
and then I'll recognize you.
Mr. Chairman, through you, could I ask Kevin, Mr. Dale, sorry, if
You're negotiating.
Mr. Chairman, if
Yes.
these types of issues might be added to the homeowners association, if they're telling us, and again, it comes to Leslie's question about, where is the planning board chooses which things it wants to be part of the enforcement strand, if you will. And I don't know that the town and, again, I think that it's probably important to the abutters about parking on the street, but there might be another event that they have where their guests park on the street, and I'm just wondering, now we're part of an enforcement on a private road that, again, I don't know that that's really what we need to be doing. I think that, some of those conditions, if there is a neighborhood concern, could be put in their private road restrictions or their homeowners associations. We could certainly get notice of that. I think we do need probably a public hearing to go over that.
I'd be happy to prepare amended and restated covenants and conditions for the subdivision as Mr. Vorse requests. Here's my quandary. I need the board to make a finding that the events that take place on this property are ancillary and incidental and subordinate to the primary use of the property. That way, the zoning enforcement officer won't serve my client with an enforcement order. That's the critical question here. And I'll follow up and amend the homeowner's declaration of covenants and restrictions to include the different criteria we've been discussing tonight, if that's the direction the planning board wants to point to. I'm happy to do that. But I do need your finding.
Okay. So, board members, are you good with being able to at least start with that, as Mr. Dale has suggested, is to have a finding form?
Yeah, sure.
Can we do that as a simple?
I'll make a finding that it's the ancillary use to the residential use. And if you'd like to change the homeowners association stuff, they have to come back and
Well,
advertise that.
let's keep to what he's requested so far, and then we're going to talk about the second part.
Okay.
It's an ancillary use.
I'd like that finding immensely.
So that's your motion, is that finding, we're good with that finding? Do I hear a second
I'll
to it?
second it.
Motion's now made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Those opposed?
I'm
Okay,
I'm
now,
opposed. I'm opposed.
you're opposed.
Yeah, I think it's commercial.
Okay.
This has been an argument that's been going on for years.
No, that's fine. I mean, he
That's
got
okay.
it. He can afford one. That's fine.
That's all right.
And I don't like living next to one, but there you go.
Okay, so what else, where are we at with anything else? Mr.
I
Chair?
think maybe, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but maybe the next step would be for Mr. Piles, who's actually the principal manager of the homeowners association, to go to the homeowners out there and suggest that certain amendments to the Declaration of Covenants and Restrictions be made, and see how they vote.
Mhm.
And if they vote for them, come back here and implement them.
Okay.
Okay.
Does that sound reasonable, board members, at this point?
Yep.
All right. I'm a lot more comfortable with you working with the neighborhood to try to come up and see what you guys can all work out together that would work. But us as a board, tracing down that avenue, great. If you want to do it, then we can look at the town bylaw at this point, and it can come before town meeting as a whole separate enforcement issue.
We're more comfortable working with the neighbors.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you.
Because that's really where the issue's going to lie, is with who lives there. In that big lots, those big houses.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Just need to make a note here. So that's going to bring us to our public hearings at this point. First one before us at this point is going to be 7918, Richmond Great Point Development LLC, owner 424648 54 Skyline Drive, 20 Dave Kim Road. I see Mr. Arminetti approaching, I believe. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members, staff, and neighbors. Dave Arminetti, Director of Real Estate Development for Richmond Great Point Development and the Richmond Company, Inc. With me tonight is my colleague and co-director, Patty Raghaveen, and our local counsel, Attorney Reed. This matter was before the board at your March meeting initially, and we had opened the public hearing, had some conversation, some input from neighbors and abutters. So in the intervening 90 days, we've gone back and taken another look at this, done some additional engineering and analysis, had a meeting with several of the abutters and neighbors, including individuals and some of the representatives of the Skyline and Surfside Homeowners Association, and come back to you this evening with a revised design, and we think a revised plan that hopefully acknowledges and tries to resolve a lot of the neighbors' concerns and issues, and those that were also articulated by the board back in March, to still achieve a subdivision with a much more limited improvement of the road to get back to the lot that we're creating in the rear, and much more substantially reduces the possibility that there could be a quote-unquote cut-through road to the additional parcel and series of parcels to the north that we own and are anticipating submitting a master plan development application through a series of special permits to the planning board, hopefully that you'll get to see initially at your July meeting. And Holly has tried to extend our technological capabilities here by putting a couple of exhibits up that we distributed. Thank you, Catherine. To illustrate what we're doing, both to the board and the neighbors who have also seen these that we've shared with them. So this is the series of 3 former 2-acre parcels that we're now trying to convert and re-subdivide into 4 2-acre parcels with an additional remnant of about 1 acre that would stay with the 20 Dave Kim property to the north. So the 42 Skyline, the board will recall, property was subdivided by way of an A&R into a 2-acre parcel. The 48 Skyline property was subdivided by way of an A&R to a 2-acre parcel, and the 54 Skyline all along the frontage of Skyline. And now we are petitioning the board to approve this definitive subdivision to create a 4th lot of 2 acres in the back. Everything complies with zoning. That's not really an issue. It really comes down to the access and the driveway and the road and the interpretation of that and the understanding of that between the neighbors, ourselves, and the board. And we understand this speaks to a larger issue that we've all been working on and working through in terms of both island-wide and in our neighborhood and in our larger 60-acre development. And we've tried to balance all those issues here with a new proposal that proposes a 12-foot wide driveway only that expands out into a 17-foot wide quasi-hammerhead turnaround for emergency vehicle and turnaround access that stops 45 feet before the 20 Dave Kim property line entirely. So it would provide access to this lot. And in full disclosure, one of the reasons why the driveway entrance is shown a little bit further to the north is we are hoping in the future, if this subdivision gets approved, to potentially come back with an A&R to try and save this existing single-family house here and recycle that for secondary dwelling use. That's why the right-of-way here shrinks down to 35 feet for about this 80-foot length here, so that this secondary dwelling would meet zoning. But that would come subsequently, several months from now, if the board is inclined to approve this overall subdivision, but I did want to make mention of that. So we're proposing that the right-of-way follow the former Paper Street, Clay Street layout, with the exception of putting in radius curves that meet the subdivision regulations, and then with this slight curve to the northwest to accommodate the minimum lot area that we need to make this a 2-acre complying lot. So that's the proposal we've made. This would be improved only to the level of a gravel driveway. It does have full drainage to meet the requirements of the DPW and the Aquifer District. So there's a series of Caltech subterranean infiltration basins here at the mouth of the driveway, and then a swale that runs up the entirety of the driveway. So the driveway length is 525 feet back from skyline, and then there's 45 feet from the rear edge of the driveway north to the 20 Dave Kim property line. We are not proposing, encouraging, or initiating any road to come through here at any point in time, and the board and the public and the neighbors will see that when we submit our master plan special permit application shortly. So in essence, we're acknowledging there might be a time in the future where the planning board, with its planning authority going forward, might see the need for larger connections out here, or I guess the Board of Selectmen eventually. But we're essentially putting it back in the shoes of those two boards that if you feel in the future at some point that this needs a further look and a second process, there would be a whole new process, whole new public hearing, and it would be one of the boards that would initiate that, not us. And we'd be glad to have that articulated as a condition of approval. We're willing to limit ourselves unilaterally and indefinitely that we will not propose, initiate in any way a cut through into the rest of our property. So I think that summarizes things. Be glad to answer any questions, whether they be technical or philosophical, and we appreciate the opportunity to resubmit this.
I have a question. Dave, I don't see an apron called out where you get onto Skyline. That's paved. You're coming from gravel to pavement. You need a pretty substantial break here.
Yeah, there is. It's a little difficult in the drawing. We should, in the final plans, we'll clean that up a little bit. I think the intent here is for it to be Belgian block, given the character of the neighborhood.
Probably should be
It's
paved.
kind of shown in a small, whoops, sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, okay, I got 2 eyes.
Didn't mean to laser you.
That looks a little odd.
You may want to.
It needs to flare both directions.
We'll wait till next month for that.
It needs to flare both directions. It just looks really weird the way you've got it rendered. But I don't think it's, I'm not sure. It probably is within our jurisdiction to say what it is. Belgian block is kind of weird for a road as opposed to a driveway. How wide is it, 12 feet?
12 feet. It's only being improved to driveway standards.
Okay, you just got to show the proper flare here onto the skyline.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
So what's the status of 20 Dave Kim? Is it?
It's still there.
I know.
It's cleaner than it used to be.
What are the plans for it?
It's included in the master plan area that was rezoned commercial neighborhood back in 2014, and that we have been planning to incorporate our workforce rental housing community, which will include a total of 225 rental apartment units on 14 and a half acres. That includes the northern property line forward, but no connection from that neighborhood or subdivision into this neighborhood, which, as the board will recall, was approved by way of zoning in some detail at the November special town meeting, and then also concurrently with our development agreement, memorandum of agreement with the Board of Selectmen that was signed at the same time.
How many units on that one lot?
Well, it'll vary. A lot will depend on your review and the staff's review that will be upcoming, so we don't want to color that too much. But the overall density is spread under the plans that we've been contemplating fairly equally. It's not concentrated in any one area or spread differently in any one area.
Skyline is not involved in that. Skyline's involved with,
The Skyline properties?
no, 4854R Skyline, that's residential.
Residential, Lug 2,
Character
zoning,
of
2-acre
everybody
lots. They're going to remain that way. They're not even owned by us anymore. All three of those parcels are owned by third parties.
Andrew?
Mr. Chairman, through you, so the portion of the land that's, because you're ending up with a parcel that's split by the zoning.
Street.
Yeah.
So
Zoning.
what you're showing here is Lot 2 with 41,000, so it's about an acre.
Yep.
So are you planning to, I mean, I think we discussed this before. Is there a restriction against accessing that property, or is that?
There isn't. That's something we'd be glad to consider and I think agree to. There's no intention to extend the apartment development into the 42 rear parcel that remains. I suppose there's a possibility that once we get done and this is all planned out, it might make sense maybe to convey that to an abutter for use for just a secondary dwelling. But I can assure the board, and we could agree to a condition in this subdivision and in our hopeful approval for our larger development, that would be precluded from part of the workforce rental housing development.
Okay.
That we can do, absolutely, if that's where you're going.
Well,
Wait a minute, clarify that again. So
Well,
Lot 2,
Ken-
just
Andrew-
clarify what he just said.
I think we're saying we don't want to develop any of the apartments on this remnant of 42 Skyline that's in the Lug 2 zoning district.
Okay.
well,
Go ahead.
right, and you can't because
By
it's
zoning, we
in a
can't.
different zone.
I'm not changing
So
that.
I think, though, that there's been a concern on some other properties of commercial use starting to, not on, maybe on your property, but starting to intensify at the edges of this. And again, I don't believe it's your particular property, but the point is that uses from the CN should not leak over into the LUG2 section.
Sure.
And I think that maybe until that gets finalized, it might be a good idea. Is this what you were thinking, Joe? And that there should be some restriction so there isn't commercial activity passing on that road.
Sure. Yeah, we understand that, and I'm sure with Attorney Reed we could work something out that's acceptable to both staff and the board and ourselves, as long as it doesn't preclude the long-term potential use for single-family use that's consistent with the Lug 2. I'm sure we could resolve something. So sure. And we're on board with that, I think, maybe more so than our predecessor was.
Anything else from the board? Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, through you again, there are certain easements that I think that the town would want over that section of the road, especially for water use and utilities. Is that something that you would be willing to grant?
Sure. I think we'd like to talk about the detail, and we'd like to be able to walk that back with the neighbors and make sure there's no real problem, but I don't foresee it being something we can't deal with. Presumably that would actually benefit the neighborhood if some of those utilities would be extended into that area further south.
I would have to agree with Andrew on that. I think we need to have a comfort level with this as well, too, because the devil's in the details here, and when we get to everything with 20 Davkim and beyond that visa, as one board member, that's got my head getting scratched a little bit at this point, saying, what's going to happen here?
Sure.
Because as a responsible board, our job is the interconnection of roadways to make everything flow, not to restrict it in any way, shape, or form. And so I'm there's a little bit of trepidation with me right now just to say this is all good in its current form without understanding what's on the other side of it. Because what's on the other side of it is pretty large in scale, and we've had some preliminary discussions, but, you know, I think we really need to get a better sense of that as a board. Just, you know, so we're responsible, you know, we're trying to be responsible not just to the neighborhood, but to the entire community as well. Because if, you know, traffic's going to be bottlenecked into certain areas, that's a problem. And that's not something as one board member I just want to sit there and shake my head. Well, it's all good now. We can't be dealing with anything else.
Sure, we understand, Mr. Chairman, there's a push and pull there, and there's a responsibility that your board takes seriously, and you're trying to balance these issues as we are, along with trying to accommodate the questions and concerns of the neighborhood. So I would assume you're not going to take final action on this tonight anyway, because I don't think you're able to, even if you wanted to, because there are no conditions of approval drafted, and I don't think Mr. Pesci's been able to complete his subsequent review because we weren't able to get this in enough time to allow for that. So we are intending to come forward with our master plan concept, if all goes well, with the submittal process to begin to be considered at your July meeting. So there's probably an ability to dovetail that. I guess all we would ask is that the board consider, if there's a general level of comfort, knowing that you can also condition the larger project, that maybe this be allowed to take its course, you know, sooner rather than later, but we understand the obligation you have.
Right, and I want to make sure that obligation still keeps continuing to be expressed, because I don't want to be disingenuous to the neighbors here at this point by saying, oh, okay, it's good as it is, that's it. I want there to be that level of transparency continuously occurring here, so that it's very clear from the onset of what the final outcome should really be. I think we always want to try to be sensitive toward that, but I don't want to blindside them either. Okay.
I have no problem stating my position right now. Long time ago, Gowacki's were bringing trucks through this residential area, the back way. They put up a gate and stopped it. I don't have any problem with this road ending right where it is and staying ended right where it is. And I think, and I agree with Andrew, that not pulling the heavy residential onto that lot number 2 is a good idea, and it's an LUG2 anyway. So I'm comfortable with this plan not cutting all the way through into the heavy, heavy use that's going to take place beyond it. I'm not going to be disingenuous, and that's the way I feel, and that's the way I'm going to feel.
Yeah, please.
Mr. Chairman, I want the board to be aware of your own rules and regulations.
Yeah, I am.
So your rules and regulations state that where there's development potential, there needs to be interconnections, and we've required this throughout in all of our plans. Now, what you don't have the right to do is to overburden private roads and to overburden other easements. But what you should be doing, exactly as this plan shows, is that the road should go to the edge of the property, which it does. And then when we look at the other plan, we need to keep our minds open and have a discussion about what's happening there, because there may be other places that we have to look at road connections. So there is a huge mega block created that, you know, prior boards didn't spend enough time looking at, and you do need to look at that, whether it's for pedestrian type connections, certainly for the utilities. But I want you to remind you that you have rules and regulations that guide you, not just making things up here.
Right, I'm not making anything else. You know how much I can't stand it, that one on Salrose that ends 10 feet away from the one on Essex with a split rail fence. Stupid.
Right.
There's plenty of those all over the place. This is a vastly different situation to me because I've got large lots. Skyline is not part of what's being taken by the town at this point. They're maintaining it as best they can. And we have a very dense subdivision occurring over here, which is totally different than, you know, the 5,000 square foot lots on Salrose and the 5,000 square foot lots on Essex, which makes no sense. I'm looking at this a lot differently because the nature of the lots on this side are totally different than the nature of the lots on the other side, which is why right now I'm comfortable with the way that looks.
But respectfully, I'm going to say, I have to concur with staff at this point, because there are certain levels of foolishness that still haunt us to this day, like that 1-foot spite strip that sits in Essex Road that completely blocks out another subdivision. That's foolishness. We've done that with other properties before as well, like out in Bacchus Lane and stuff. These are things we've got to get away from. So, like I said, I respect where you're coming from, but I also want to be clear too at this point that we are responsible for having to look at how everything flows together at this point. So, like I said, as one board member, I don't want to candy coat this. I don't want to make people think, oh, it's all good and done. It's a done deal. Let's talk. Like I said, the moment we begin to see what's going to happen on the other side of this, we're going to have a much better feel for how it all integrates together. And I think, as one board member, I will be sensitive to what the neighbors have to say for themselves. Absolutely. We'll listen. But again, we also have to look at how does the whole thing integrate together for the entire island.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Could I just add, too? I think one of Linda's points is absolutely correct, is that, and this is what I talked about with the overburdening of the easement, there may have to be public ownership of the interconnecting roads. So you can't basically, the planning board can't require a road to be built that accesses private roads if it overburdens them.
Right.
So that would have to be corrected sometime in the future by other boards. That's part of the reason why the example that you all have cited, and there's another through road, again, laid out as part of the subdivision for Nobska Way, but there would have to be takings by the town to make those interconnections happen.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is that this board is required to coordinate those, but it doesn't necessarily have the authority to have them all constructed.
Correct.
Without the next level of investment by the broader town.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Thanks,
Yeah, please.
Dave, thanks for, including this land, the road land, as part of you're not putting anything. So in other words, what we're all saying here really is it's set up where in another time, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, this can be looked at where this land is not used up, something else can't be done. And in July, I'd be looking for some kind of crafty way to have bicycles or pedestrians be able to use this without vehicles being able to access it, like we talked about. What do you think about that? Because, people are going to want to go to the beach. The bicycle shouldn't have to go, the hard way, just like a car. Surfside's that way. So you'd think that you'd want to make bikes be able to go that way. The roads are going to be improved. By the time this is all done, Boulevard and stuff are going to be fixed. So just a thought to put to you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else? Yes, good. Anything else, Leslie, Andrew?
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is, all right, so this is a public hearing at this point. You all done, Mr. Arminetti? I'm sorry.
Yes, just available for questions. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Go ahead. Erica. Hi.
Hi, Erica Mooney. I own 60 Skyline Drive. I will say I'm happy to see that it doesn't go all the way through. And I'm wondering, in the meantime, I know there's a bigger plan in the future, but is there anything in the 45 feet area between the end of the driveway and the border of 20 Dave Kim that's going to be, is it still going to be brush? Is there going to be something there to prohibit vehicle traffic from coming down into Skyline? And I only ask that because, and this touches on something that Linda just mentioned, with commercial uses coming through to Skyline. In the last month, I've gotten 2 notices for over the roads from Structures Unlimited coming from Nancy Ann Lane, cutting across Kim Glowacki's private piece of property on Woodland and using that route for house moves. So that is my biggest concern, that continued traffic is going to come down this driveway or roadway inappropriately. I also have young children, and they have friends in the neighboring areas. I would be actually very excited if this was some sort of pedestrian route or bike route that the kids could get through, almost like where Sakenau and Tacoma Way meet up, and there's a post in the road there, so traffic can't get through with vehicles, and I know Nat doesn't like posts, but just to actually allow that to go through, and possibly in the greater scheme of things in the bigger master plan as well, having some more bike routes so that those neighborhoods are accessible to pedestrians and bikers. But anyway, I'm just curious about what, if anything, is going to be happening at the end of that driveway in that 45-foot section to keep traffic out.
Is the gate still there?
Yeah, go ahead, Ann. All right, go ahead. Patty. You probably have a better feel for it.
Patty Ragavine for Richmond Great Point Development. Currently, in that corner, there's an old Finest trailer full of garbage. That's what exists there. So I don't know. I think there's an old gate that's broken, and the brush is not there, so it's not actually vegetated. But obviously, we'd be open to considering, ways to make that non-accessible. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just looking, it looks like there's a grade, the way it's being graded, looks almost like a berm there. I don't know if that's... Is it? Okay.
Anyone else wishing to comment on this? Yes, please. Hi.
Hi.
Come on down.
My name is William Davidson. I live at 61 Skyline Drive. The berm Mr. Arminetti speaks of, I think you've already cut through to make the illustration road as it is now on Skyline. So the berm has a cut through it as it stands. I think that we're talking about putting in bike paths and stuff, tying into Skyline Drive, which doesn't even have a sidewalk. I think that the elephant in the room is the connection to this road, ultimately, as stated in the original certified letter I received with the board's name on it. And I think that it would be prudent to wait on this application until the total plan comes out so we can see what their ultimate goals are. I don't think we should look at this until that is obvious to the rest of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Beanie.
I agree on waiting on this road altogether. It's like a sword of Damocles hanging over our head, and you keeping it open, that your job is to make sure roads go through. There's hundreds of families and homes that you're affecting, a neighborhood that was established years and years ago, and so many of us work hard to move there and be that neighborhood. And this isn't an airport, Nat, that we built and we're worried about. It was already approved and we built on there. This road was never supposed to be there. This was strictly a 2-acre zoning. It's a beautiful, beautiful neighborhood that extends far beyond Skyline. To drag in 400-plus houses, a Brazilian restaurant, taxis, and UPS cars, and FedEx, and every home in that family having 2 or 3 cars, it's insanity for a neighborhood like that. And I don't think this road should be approved in any form. They bought the lots knowing they were going to do this, and they shouldn't have done it in the first place. Shouldn't even be approved to be a driveway.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to comment on this? Let me just see if there's anyone else in the audience. Go ahead.
Andrew, aren't all of these lots 2-acre lots, except for that back one?
Yes.
So 42A, 48A, 54A, 4854R are all 2 acres lots, so they meet the zoning requirement,
Correct.
even with the road cut out.
Yes.
The only one that doesn't is that back one, and nothing's really happening with that back one right now. So this street is taking on the characteristics of Webster and some of those really small ones that go off of Monahasset and everything else. So, and it's under the same rules and regulations all the rest of you are. It has to meet this zoning, it has to meet the septic, it has to meet wells, it has to meet ground cover, and it's the same size lots that everybody else has out there. So I'm not as concerned about running this road, 12-foot wide road. I'm concerned about it connecting, and it will not connect. So there's not going to be anybody coming through from the Brazilian restaurant or anything else that's over on the other side, which is the way we have it drawn. And what remains to be worked out is how to block off, I guess, the northerly part of this road so it prevents anybody but pedestrians or a bike or something coming through there. So it's a subdivision that can take place because it's a big lot. I believe Gordon's was also, Andrew, wasn't Gordon's stable? That was all subdivided as well. That was a big, big lot because they had horses there. That was subdivided on Skyline, and I believe there was one more lot before that that was subdivided because they had enough, because these were just big lots at the time, and they bought a couple of them together. So I'm not as worried about them subdividing into conforming lots. I was worried about that road getting any bigger and going anywhere else but where it's going, because I don't want all that stuff coming through your residential neighborhood at all.
All right, anyone else in the audience wanting to participate at this point? If not, it would be appropriate for us to continue to July. Does that work for you guys? July 11th, okay.
I'll make a motion to continue to July 11th.
Do I hear thank you. Discussion, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next thing before us is 7972, which is GG Development LLC modification at 11 Millville Lane. Mr. Bodett. Good evening, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening.
Hi.
Just stick it over here. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rick Bodett for the applicant, GG Development. You may remember that 2 years ago you approved a 12-lot subdivision here, only 10 of which could be shown on the original plan. Right, what you see there. Because of this paper road that dissected the property. The additional 2 lots were only going to come into effect once the land court issued an order eliminating that way. We have received the order. The way is eliminated, and so now what we have for approval tonight is hopefully the final 12-lot subdivision showing the 2 lots off of Red Mill Lane here as well. And in addition, what you see in red highlighted on the screen there and on this plan is the land court engineering department determined that there's a gap in the ownership of the layout of Red Mill Lane, so that essentially so that we don't own that part of the layout that's surrounded in red there. So what we're asking for is a waiver of the width requirements just in that area. The rest of the road, of course, will be the 40-foot width. This doesn't affect the existing traveled surface. It is improved. It's paved. It doesn't affect any infrastructure at all, any utilities. So, happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, go ahead. Sure.
Rick, so this just allows you to put the other 3 lots in, or 2 lots?
Yeah, if you see on the screen, 23 and 24 are really what comes out of this.
Okay, because lot 22 is getting subdivided because of Red Mill Road status changing.
Yeah, the old lot 22.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that way that goes through it is gone now.
And you're reconfiguring 23, what I can tell. I got
25, the one on the bottom.
I got it. Yep, one on the bottom.
Anyone else on the board? Go ahead.
Yeah, could you have gone A&R?
Not as an approval required subdivision.
You mean,
Well, it's on
well,
a
not
two-
for the waiver, but
Well, it's on an adequate road, right? No.
yeah, I mean,
It's
for
improved.
those lots, I mean, I guess, but this was part of the original plan to begin with.
Okay.
Anything for staff?
No, we recommend approval.
All right.
Okay.
Is there anyone in the public hearing's open at this point, so if there's anyone in the audience wishing to comment on this? Not seeing any hands raised?
Motion to close the public hearing?
Do I hear a second? Second. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it
Motion to
unanimously.
approve?
Do I hear a second? Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Great, thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Doc.
Next thing is 18-16, Roseboro and 15th LLC and 50/50 Properties LLC, 135 and 7 Flint Road and 34 Tomahawk Road.
Is this going to be held over?
Was it supposed to be held over?
Anticipate continuing to the public hearing.
Yeah, we don't. Okay, here we go. Mr. Bracken. Okay. You just need to rustle them up. There. Just going.
Yes.
Okay.
Next time.
I know how much you like to get it at the meeting, Linda, and not in advance. Which is why I like to do it that way.
Yeah. That 11th hour stuff.
So we are working on some revisions to try and meet the planning board's last set of comments, and because those technical changes were not ready for this meeting, what we'd like to do is just present the concepts that are being worked on from the engineering point of view, so that we don't waste your time when we come back with the real detailed stuff. So we'll keep this quick. If you see the proposed storage building 2, which is essentially like garage bay type storage, that is being pushed back 5 feet, which requires the planning board to approve that waiver. And what that does is allow us a 35-foot aisle width. And then the concept is that and if you look at your highlighted, and Don, thank you for your coloring. The highlighted version, we've essentially created a loading zone in front of the entire building on both sides. So what I think we heard loud and clear is that you anticipate a lot of people pulling up and loading and unloading, and what we wanted us to try to do was alleviate where they were, like a parking lot isn't as good as the massive loading area, is what we heard. And so that was what we're trying to do here. So essentially the entire front of both buildings becomes a loading area, with the concept that we would then likely turn this into one-way travel. So most likely we'd go from Tomahawk through to Flint. So you'd have circular traffic in that one direction with loading on both sides. We've also, to the east of the property, created a new loading area that it's not colored in, but it's that new paved surface, because those are sort of garage bay type. They're not drive-in, but they're door open type areas. And then the same thing on the other side. On the west side, it's a much smaller one because that is just a door. We could, if the planning board thought it was appropriate, increase the size of the sort of off-street, really on-street parking there. If you'd like to see it, it's easy enough to do that on the west side. We also intend to. We have a landscape designer working on a plan where we would try to do a very urban type of landscaping, where instead of having grass, we would go with essentially what you'd find in parking lots, where you have shrubs and trees with a higher quality and impact but less volume. And I just wanted to get feedback from the board if that's what you'd want to see in terms of a larger open space waiver, but a sort of a higher quality of vegetation, or more volume of vegetation in a more compact area, I should say. I think that's it. Don, did I cover everything?
The accessory apartment.
The second one?
The apartment.
Yeah, we talked about that last time. I'll mention it again. There's a What? Yeah. It hasn't been shown in your plans yet, but we are currently, and I think I put this in mentioned it last time, are proposing an accessory apartment above the proposed storage building. And we might actually propose two. I believe that the subdivision requirements only allow one apartment no matter how many lots you own, and this is actually 8 lots. And I don't know, I guess the question is, before we explore a second one, if the planning board would grant the waiver of that condition, is one question we have.
Good, Andrew.
No, it's a condition. It's a subdivision condition, and I would think, considering there could have been 8 dwelling units, that one additional one would be in order, considering our housing situation. So I don't know why you wouldn't do it. Well, it's not zoning. It is the condition. We could modify the condition for this subdivision to remove the 1 per lot. We could do that. I mean, we would have to have a separate hearing on that, but I think that might be in order.
Yeah, and I think we'd come back and apply for that separately. But I wanted to float the concept since we're...
So, how many parking spaces are we giving up again?
How many spaces are we waiving? Or
Yeah, how many are getting waived, yeah? Like 20?
A total of 31 spaces were required. So we just showed loading areas across the buildings. We didn't show those as spaces, but we could calculate how many spaces if those were to be considered spaces. But there's still a significant waiver being requested for parking.
Yeah.
And are we offering anything for that waiver? Any contribution? It makes a big difference on your building area, right? Say you waive 10 spaces, 200 square foot of space, 2,000 square feet.
Yeah. Well, the loading area, which is obviously not required under the bylaw, but I think you want to see, takes up a bunch of spaces, and we've also added other loading areas that would count as parking. But to your point, if the board found it appropriate to require some contribution, then that would not be an unusual condition.
Okay. Did we think about that at all? Or?
Probably respectfully say I think it's. Hold on. I'd probably respectfully say that maybe you do need to do your calculations on the loading spaces just so it becomes kind of a much clearer number if the board's going to be requesting it. And
yeah,
I don't know quite what.
Yeah, no, I understand.
I don't know quite what you've got in mind for that, but it might be worth the conversation to.
I think we ought to look at it.
Yeah.
But if they're gaining a few thousand square feet of building.
Yeah. I would be happy to either make a proposal to staff or take a recommendation from staff. Again, the point of tonight was instead of
I understand.
getting too deep into the details, we wanted to float the concept, and I think that
I wanted
that
to
is
get that out there.
Yeah, I'll follow up with staff that to find an appropriate contribution.
Yeah.
Contribution to what?
That's
That's the problem.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hoping.
No, I mean, it's nothing. The biggest problem is
time-
Arrowhead Drive.
Time out.
I mean,
Time.
I'm sure that our creative planning staff could.
just saying, I mean, this is a weird request
But
for this particular area.
let me respectfully say at this point, Mr. Markmucher's raised it, and I think between him and staff, with some numbers, before the next meeting, can come up and let us know what their thoughts are.
Yeah, I'm sure we could, when we come forward with a more detailed proposal that has the updated parking calculations, also include something that we would have discussed with staff.
Great.
And Mr. Chairman, there are, there's some sidewalk interconnections up, not in this particular area, but near here, which would serve the area, Nobody Farm Road, and there's a gap remaining on Old South Road. There's some other things that, well, beyond Arrowhead Drive that we could, might be appropriate.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point.
Yep, thank you. So I think, board members, if you have any thoughts about that, please make sure you funnel them to Andrew and Leslie in the very near future. Please. Is there anything else? So this is there anything else, Mr. Cohen?
No, we just wanted to get your feedback so that we could provide you the technical corrections.
Right, so let me do my due diligence here at the moment. Is there anyone in the audience, this is a public hearing, so if is there anyone in the audience who wishes to comment on this? Are you going to be ready by July?
Yes.
All right.
Motion to continue July
Sure.
11th.
Well, just one, on the west side, did you want to see that get bigger on the west side, or
Yeah, I'd like to see that get bigger.
Okay.
So 2 cars can get in there at
Okay,
least.
so what I'm going to come back with, just so we're all on the same page, is a more technical set of drawings for this with the updated parking calculations. We're going to apply for the second dwelling waiver. We're going to, I think we probably need to add the waiver for the 5-foot setback adjustment, and we'll have an updated landscaping plan, and we'll discuss with staff an appropriate contribution. Does that cover everything?
Sounds really good. So if there's no one else in the public interested in discussing this?
Motion to continue July 11th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion's now made and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, ayes have unanimously. Okay, 29-16, Mary G. Hurd, estate of Edward Hurd to Lucretia Mott Lane.
Wait a minute, what are you doing?
Oh, did I skip
What
ahead?
are you
I'm
doing?
sorry, I skipped.
What are you doing?
Oh, forgive me.
Turn the page.
Forgive me. The pages were bound together for a second. Oh, my
I'm going,
God.
where? Whoa.
22-16, Walter J. Glacky for Perry Lane. Easy, easy, easy. Thank you for reminding me, Bill.
Good evening. For the applicant, Peter Kyberg.
Oh, I was out of order. Too.
There was a number of concerns that were raised at our last hearing. I think that can be boiled down to that you wanted to see more details on the proposed plan. And so we endeavored to do that and filed a new proposed plan with you. Some of those details that you're asking for was an extended piece of fence, the building off of the setback line, parking spots, more detail on the actual drive and what it's made of and so forth, more detail on the planting of the Leland cypress in the front of the property, and lighting, among other things. And so I'm hopeful that we've addressed a lot of those concerns with the new plan. And
Okay.
that's it.
Board members? Do you have anything you'd like to offer at this point? Okay. Anything from staff? Andrew, Leslie, you good?
Silence is so golden.
It can be sometimes. Okay. It'd be kind of nice if they piped up and said something as opposed to keeping you in suspense here. This is a public hearing, ladies and gentlemen. If anyone would like to comment on this. Hearing no comments.
Motion to close the public hearing.
All right, and do I hear a second? Second. Motion's now made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have unanimously.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Mr.
Gary?
Chairman, I
Yes.
think we need to talk about, which one are we working on first?
This is
Number
4.
6 or 8?
4.
Sorry, 4 or 6?
Yeah. 4.
They're
So
kind of-
4 with
right
the
now.
building on it?
Yes.
Okay.
They're kind of stuck together.
No, I believe, I'm sorry, but I think we're working on 4, which has no building on it yet, and 6 currently has a little building on it.
4 is the one that's getting the big
4 will
building.
have the big building.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Right, so are we, right now we're just working on 4.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve both of them. Well, we
Was
have to
there-
open
sorry,
the second one.
Was there something, Andrew?
I do have some discussion about what the conditions will be,
All right, so we're
Mr.
just
Chairman.
gonna-
We talked about no exterior storage.
Mhm.
Are we still, I believe we're still there with that?
Correct, Mr. Kyber?
We have not advertised for that. I don't know if that request has changed at all.
Not yet.
Hold on.
There is no request for any exterior storage on 4 Perry Lane.
Okay. And Mr. Chairman, I
Yes,
would
sir.
assume that that is going to be a condition that's clearly part of this.
I think we were pretty clear at our last meeting, and I haven't heard anything further from Mr. Kyberg, and you're in agreement with that, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And that, and there should be, I think, conditions about that the site is kept in an overall, orderly, and it's maintained. exactly as it's shown here, that there needs to be, any of these, any of this landscaping that, dies needs to be, I think that, unfortunately, there's a little bit of a history with the other site, and that the conditions that exist there should not be relocating.
To just
Not even a little asphalt plant?
A little miniature model, maybe, but inside the building.
So it'd be landscaping planted and maintained as shown on the plan.
Right, and I think there has to be a reference to the lighting bylaw. And this is for personal storage, is that right?
That's right. This is not commercial in any way.
So there'll be no retail sales from this location?
None.
Or late night operations or vehicle repair, yeah.
I can't say for certain what will happen in the future, but there's been no request for anything like that,
Okay.
and I don't foresee that will happen.
So I would anticipate, Mr. Chairman, that these will find their way into the conditions.
And I think we were pretty clear on that, but I agree with you 100%, Andrew. And you're in agreement with Mr. Kyber?
Yes.
Good, okay. Was there anything?
That's it.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve with those conditions.
Hold on for 1 sec.
Okay.
Was there anyone, you've heard some last-minute changes, was there anyone in the audience wishing to comment on that? I just want to make sure, because when it gets
I
to
thought we
that
already
level.
closed the public hearing.
Yes, we did, and then there were some last-minute things. I just want to be clear, just doing a little due diligence. So, okay, we're all good.
And, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, please.
Ms. Snell has asked for clarification on the hours, so that needs to be part of the...
Yeah, that occurred to me, and I've been mulling that over as the weeks have gone on, but there is no commercial use here, so there's no hours of business per se, because there's no business.
Right.
Right.
So I'm not on a personal storage building. That's slippery slope there.
I think it's commercial.
Commercial land, but it's not.
Can we have one conversation at a time? We've got 3 running right now.
I think, Mr. Chairman, some form of something that deals with because the activity is somewhat commercial in nature, it could be. I know there might be things to visit here at the building, and if that's done quietly, I don't think that's a problem. But I think there could be instances where there maybe should be something about hours.
Certainly, I mean, if you're proposing something along the lines, there shall be no loud moving of heavy equipment past, 8 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night, I can't see that my client would object to that. He has no intention of doing that anyway.
All right, so
we'll work on something in the draft decision then that addresses that, and then we can all take a look at it then. Is that good?
I'll make a motion to approve with appropriate conditions as discussed to sign in the office.
Second.
That motion's made and seconded, and I don't see anyone. I'm still a little concerned that we interjected a number of things here. No one, everyone in the audience is good with this, right? There's no one. Okay, good. I'm satisfied then. So your motion is accepted, seconded. Discussion on the issue. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So next thing before us is 2316, which is now 6 Perry Lane. Board members.
We already know about it.
Yep. Did you want? Go ahead, Andrew. This is important.
Mr. Chairman, I'm assuming the similar kind of conditions. Could I ask the applicant through you?
Yes.
Do you anticipate these being conveyed separately, or is this going to be used together, or what do we see
It's going
here?
to be used together, and the plans for 6 Perry Lane are still under discussion, and I would ask that we take no action until the July meeting.
I think that.
Okay.
Good.
Okay, make that motion to
Continue.
July 11th.
So, second.
Motion's now made and second for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, 25-16, Nantucket Cottage Hospital, 5759 South Prospect Street, 10 Vesper Lane. For the applicant. Gentlemen, good evening. Mr. Toohey, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, John Toohey, here representing the hospital. We're going to pass out a very, hopefully abbreviated presentation, certainly not what we did the last time, which hopefully will be responsive to some of the questions and issues that were raised or that we have heard about over the last period of time. So just give a moment to get that out, if we could.
Thanks.
Why in the hell is he listed at all? Why the hell is he listed first?
Thank you. The first piece of information, obviously, the parties involved. We did bring back our project team tonight. John Jennings is here from Canon, Rich O'Connell, Steve Glowacki. Some of you'll hear tonight to answer some of the specific questions. But from a sort of an overview presentation standpoint, what our thought was talk a little bit, just a minute, about sustainability. It was one of the questions that was raised by the board. Secondly, touch on helipad, because we have had some follow-up meetings with MedFlight. So we thought that would be important information to convey to the board. The updated site plan. We did reorient the Anderson building, and also, as we showed you in draft form the last time, relocated the Vesper Lane entrance. Touch for a minute on accessible spaces, also lighting and fixtures, and landscaping, all of which were issues that have come about for discussion. Also, we did have a series of Ed Pesci comments, engineering comments. We did update some plans. We know on Saturday that we did get a response from Ed that we had answered his issues, and we'll talk about that for a moment. And then we'll advise you of the HDC status and show you where the final renderings were. So with that, I'd ask Tim to start. One of the issues with sustainability, we are going as a LEED Silver certification on this building. Some of the things that we incorporate for LEED Silver, LED lighting, both interior and exterior, low-flow plumbing fixtures, obviously for flow, energy-efficient mechanical systems. We're going to have a series of those, again, to reduce energy loads. Low-impact developments for stormwater. There's a very extensive recycling program, both as it relates to construction materials as well as operation of the hospital. Drought-resistant plants to reduce irrigation needs. We just picked a half a dozen or so of the LEED Silver certification checklist, but that's where we're going through. Second comment that came up, questions about the helipad. We have met with MedFlight. They liked our design. They liked the location. They were happy with the flight path. They had a couple of questions, which we told them we would work out operationally. They'd like a wireless camera to be installed on the hospital, a few other things. But I think they're good with the location, the actuated gates. They liked where it was in relationship to the emergency room, liked the secure location. So we're very pleased with that. From a site plan standpoint, Anderson building relocation or really reorientation, it's the same place that we showed you, but when we met with the HDC, and that's in this area here, they wanted to be sure that the Anderson building, sort of what we call the front of the Anderson building, which today sort of sits into the parking lot, is actually oriented out onto Prospect, and we're able to create some walkways around it so it all functions as it does today. The second thing was the updated Vesper lane entrance. Again, it was over here before. We've moved it down, so it's directly across from 10 Vesper. One of the issues, because I mentioned 10 Vesper, was the issue of where 10 Vesper moving off the site. We did look at that. We looked at it originally, should it stay on the campus? I know, Mr. Chairman, that was one of your comments. We think that this, because of its fairly low-intensive use, is an appropriate use for there. We have to get it off the site because it's in the area of construction. But also, we had, when we looked at parking, we're going from over 250 parking spaces now to 230, actually about 242 to 238. That's what we're going to for parking spaces. We actually had them look at recently, well, what if we were to keep 10 Vesper on the main campus? To give you an idea, we lose 27 parking spaces on our main site, which actually would bring us below even our parking requirement under zoning. So we would like to move forward in keeping the Founders Building be relocated to 10 Vesper. Accessible spaces, one of the questions that were raised, there's a requirement to have 7 handicap accessible spaces. We actually will have 14 on the site. 6 of which will be sized and marked for van space. They will be dispersed. Now, you'll note we yellowed them on the plan so you could see where we located them. Some people might ask, well, why aren't they right here, which is in the main parking? Because one of the criteria is closest to, and actually the distance from here to that entrance and that entrance to here are actually the same as if we located them actually at the edge. The advantage is you will do not have to cross traffic and flow if we have our handicap accessible spaces here and here for the main entrance. And then we added some spaces over here for the Anderson building, obviously down at Vesper, and then up by emergency. So we ended up with 14 spaces for accessible. So that has been updated. Lighting. This is the lighting plan that we submitted. When we met with HDC, so that the board is aware, the issues were how can we reduce the number of lighting poles? How can we focus what I'll call the period fixtures at the main entrances and really what you see out on the roadway network? How can we obviously minimize any light spill, but how can we also maintain adequate security lighting? So this is, you can see where the blue dots are and the darker dots, which are the more what I'll call period lighting, again at the entrances and the main drive. So what we did, we proposed a new layout to the HDC, which reduced the overall number of fixtures. We went from 72 light poles to 46, while still keeping the same LED fixture. We put the period lighting again at the entrances and in the main drive. We pulled the lighting away from the eastern perimeter because even though those are mostly hospital properties, there is one that is not. So we wanted to move that lighting away from the eastern perimeter, and obviously always by maintaining adequate security. We ended up with light pole height of 12 feet in the area for the period lighting, and a total of 25 feet. When we originally went to HGC, it was as high as 30. We're now down to 25 feet, which, just to give you an example, and if you go to the next slide, we go back, Tim, for a second, go back to the lighting layout. One more, go back to where we were. Thank you. There we go. You can tell, if you look at this, we greatly reduce the number of light poles that would be there. To give you a sense, Stop and Shop has a light pole every 5 to 7 spaces. We're 9 to 14 spaces. So we're trying to, again, reduce. We are at a height, because remember your bylaw talks and speaks to, it has to be dark sky compliant, which we absolutely will be, but also talks to 12 feet for pedestrian height, and then what is safe for what's in the parking lot. And we ended up with, this will be at 25. The high school, for example, the fixture is very similar to what you see at the high school. The high school is 20 to 21 feet, just to give you a sense. Our building is 42. These are at 25. So that's where we ended up on the lighting. Landscaping, which would be the next, I'm going to ask Rich O'Connell to come up. We didn't spend time, actually, the last time on landscaping. So, Mr. Chairman, with your indulgence, we'll do a very quick run-through on landscaping. Rich?
Right behind you, John. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board, for the record, my name is Rich O'Connell. I'm with R.J. O'Connell & Associates. We're the civil engineers and land planners for the project. This is the technical landscape plan with all of the species and all of that, but Tim, I think we can go to this one's a little better. So the overall concept for landscaping was to create a landscape that was visually appealing to both the visitors to the hospital and the employees. Starting with the entries, the prominent entries, South Prospect being the main entry, is going to be flanked by native Nantucket fieldstone retaining walls, low shrubbery and perennial planting, so it's going to be a very impressive entrance. And to the same degree, but a little lesser because it's smaller on the Vesper, so we're creating 2 main, very attractive entrances coming into the site. The South Prospect Street frontage and the Vespa frontage are going to be more like a typical street with hardwood, oak and pine and elm, so it'll look like any other street. The interior of the parking lot, John talked to the lighting, and the planting and the lighting has all been coordinated. We have shade trees to help with the heat island effect, and we've also provided shrubbery and walkways that'll bring you through the site from the main entrance over to the Anderson building, down to the Founders, and of course up to the bikeways up at South Prospect. When we get to the against the residential, abutting residential properties, We blended in some evergreens to go in with the natural hardwood that's in there now. So we've kind of beefed up the buffers along the residential. The other major landscape item is probably the healing garden, which is in this area. Now, the healing garden is going to take on more of a residential feel. It'll be walkways, benches, places to sit, nice shrubbery. It's supposed to give you a feeling of relaxation, as opposed to the more commercial type. So the plantings are very varied. We've looked at four-season type of environment. All of the plantings are native, drought tolerant where required. We've used the Nantucket Biodiversity Initiative Organization, the UMass Nursery and Urban Forest Program for drought tolerant species, and also the Nantucket Land Council for resources. I do have Bill Fleming here from William Fleming Associates, who did the actual detailed landscaping, if there's any real detailed questions. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, just a couple more items. The Pesci engineering review, this seems like a long list, but we did go through, and he was kind enough to go through a couple of sets of our plans, focused on some issues of site layout. The one there I would call out, he's asked us to get a letter from the fire department regarding the fire hydrant locations, which we certainly can do. I think was happy with our parking and traffic plan. We did add a grease trap at the request of the sewer department. We did make some adjustment. The lighting is dark sky compliant. We did make some further adjustments to lighting, mostly related to pole height. Stormwater, there was some labeling and some additional materials. We did get his formal response on June 10th. We did do a response to that. We did hear from him on Saturday saying that he had accepted our changes. He had one minor change, which was a relabeling of a catch basin, but I think as staff can confirm, I think he is satisfied with where we're at from engineering review. I thought it might be helpful just for a moment on HDC status. We had 11 filings with the HDC. We have approval of 10 of the 11. We are down to, including the main hospital, we are down to an issue of treatment on a wall and some lighting. Are our two issues that remain, which is the one hardscape for the main hospital. This gives you a little sense of elevation. Our main elevation, as you'll pull up, as you saw in the landscaping plan, what Vesper Lane will look like, also the view, what we call the ambulance drop-off here, and then the emergency entrance, which faces today, we'll term the rear of the property. I think everybody is very pleased with where we ended up with our roof treatment and windows to make this, it was a good process to make it quite a building. So just to recap, hopefully we've answered your comments. Hopefully we've answered Mr. Pesci's comments. We are at 10 out of the 11 HGC filings. We do have one more. And then we did list here, as we opened this presentation at our last meeting with the compliance with the site plan criteria, we feel that we have addressed the issues as requested, but we're all here tonight, certainly ready and willing and able, hopefully, to answer any questions or respond to any comments or concerns.
Board members.
Go ahead. John, I want to go back to the helipad drawing for a second. Wait, what's that little foofy thing in the middle for?
The goofy thing in the middle?
You don't need it. The island thing. I mean, having worked with a lot of disabled people, just logistically, coming in and trying to come around and around and around and going in at an angle and then running into the island is very difficult for some people who are challenged in the first place. Yeah, I don't think you need the landscape island. You're in the back of the building.
All right, see if you want to speak to that.
And they can be, and the spaces can be straightened out, so there's a little bit more room there. This is impossible.
Linda, for the record, Steve Glowacki from R.J. O'Connell and Associates. And I believe, are you speaking about this planted island right here?
Yeah, I don't need that.
The island serves to circulate parking around in a counterclockwise fashion, so vehicles will come in and circulate, potentially drop off, and then pull into these handicap accessible parking stalls right here.
Yeah, good luck with that. What's the distance between the edge of that parking space and that island?
From on this side, from here?
No, from the back of the parking space to where you back into the stupid island.
Oh, that is 16 feet clear.
No. Aisles here normally are 24 feet. And maneuvering a handicap van, which I've had to do, impossible in 16 feet.
Agreed, which is why we angle these to work as a single direction.
They're going to crucify that thing. You'd be better off getting rid of it, straightening them out, and letting them just come in and go back out and give them all the room they can to back out. I've watched them come in and out of the spaces in front of the hospital. I've worked with them for disabled for years. The dexterity is not there. So I don't know why you have this thing. Straighten them out and just let them pull in and pull out.
Understood. As I mentioned, initially the program was to circulate them in a counterclockwise fashion for the drop-off, and then, as I mentioned, we angled the spaces off there to hopefully provide sufficient maneuvering room in there, which we believe we have. But
you don't have it. 16 feet is just not enough.
Just for the one spot.
No, for all of them.
The others are clear.
The others are clear.
No, I don't agree with it. I think it's ridiculous to do that. But the other thing is, where's the drop-off for the ambulance? That one?
The ambulance drop-off is here. There are currently sufficient room for 2 ambulance drop-off.
That was my question. How much room do you have? Do you have 2 bays or just 1 bay?
We have actually 2 bays and then another lay-by for a third ambulance if needed, and this was in coordination with the fire department.
Okay, because having been on the ambulance for 10 years, it was sometimes we had all 3 running.
Understood. And that's the same impression we got from the fire department as well.
Okay, 'cause it's hard for me to tell how wide that is and whether you get 2 bays under there. I just can't see it under there.
This distance here, I believe, is 22 feet over here, which is, again, sufficient for the vehicles to pull in. It gets a little wider as you get further in, of course, for maneuverability by the door, which is in this location here.
You got enough room to go forward and back in because that's what they do.
Yes. Essentially, with the exception of when their helicopter is inbound, these gates will be open, so there is plenty of room, but we have run this sufficiently. We've checked that there is sufficient clearance for a vehicle to come up this way and back into this bay. We've checked the maneuvering on that.
If you have enough room at this point to give them more room, because the ambulances are really sometimes 14 feet clear, that's more than 22 feet, 2 of them in 2 bay. You got to be able to get in and out of both sides. If you've got room, I don't need green grass up there. I'd rather have more room. Just cut off that piece right there and back it up a little bit and give yourself a little bit more room to play with. You don't need to run it so tight up in that corner because you can't see it from a publicly traveled way at the moment. You've taken both those roads. Give yourself a lot more room up there. I don't need grass up there. We need maneuverability and practicality up there. I don't care if there's a planting bed there. But you just need more room, and you've got the ability right now to have more room up in that corner, and it can get pretty congested. Sometimes there's 20 people in that emergency room. So just sort of keep that in mind.
Will do. Thank you very much for the input, Linda.
Because I don't need one more blade of grass on this thing.
Anyone else on the board? You all set?
Excuse me.
Yeah, please, Mr. Ream. Yeah.
John, I just see with the lighting plan, I don't see any lighting over the handicap in the founding building, or is that because of the hours of operation? But I don't see any lighting there.
I mean, over the
Across
door.
the street of Vesper?
There is. It actually doesn't show up on this plan, but over on Vesper, there are a wall pack light over the entrance, and then 2 of the period lighting fixtures on each end of that landscape piece. And they're there's one right there, and there's one right there, and then there's one over the door.
Okay.
So there's a total of 3.
Great.
Anyone else?
I have a...
Go ahead, Di.
Bring a question on the lighting. What do you think about having some of the lighting in the middle and going over towards that donut in the hole in the donut guy who lives there? If somebody has to go out of the hospital at 2 o'clock in the morning and he pushes a button and that lights up the whole area, but the whole area is not lit up all night, would that work at all?
Again, what we tried to do, and I think, Diane, over that area, in the original plan, we had several light stanchions.
Yeah, I remember that.
We took them out, and we moved everything in with a cutoff fixture here to really eliminate that impact. The problem with safety and security lighting with people going out is having, at times, a dark parking lot. So we're very concerned about there are a certain minimal level of light. They're required for engineering standards. We've tried to really minimize that as much as we could, pulled all the light away from perimeters and pulled the light away from the properties over on this side. So we did try to bring it all in as much as we could. We also eliminated, there are no double light fixtures, as you'll see sometimes in parking lots. Every one of these now is a single. There are no doubles.
All set.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Matt,
just real quick, John, on the cemetery access parking, what are we doing now? Have you talked to, like,
We've had a couple of meetings
different
with
people that are
Alan
involved?
Reinhardt.
Did you talk to Alan? Okay,
Absolutely
good.
talked to him twice.
Yeah.
We're going to have 2 spaces there, and what we're talking about, and Tim, maybe go to the landscape plan.
Yeah.
Is a couple of spaces along here, and then we've offered to grade and build a secondary means of egress where the grade drops here to go in this way. So, that's what we're talking about. He hasn't. He quite honestly, last time I talked to Alan, he hadn't decided that that's what they want to do. But we offered to do certainly the 2 spaces and to do a pathway right about there. See if I got that space
Perfect.
right about there.
And it doesn't have to be, like to hold up the project for this. This is something that's really important that we get this to work.
We actually, when we did the zoning, we sent them a letter and committed to doing the 2 spaces and the walkway.
Okay, good.
Anyone else on the board? So, just a few things. For the record at this point, when I brought up the thing about the Founders Building, both John and Greg were a little concerned. So I did have the opportunity to meet with them over the course of the past week, which I think was productive. A few things that we talked about, which I'm still looking forward to, is the parking survey that you guys did, to get a copy of that.
Yeah, we did, Steve Gwacki and his group and R.J. O'Connell, they did an analysis of the existing number of parking spaces.
Right.
And then looked at demand, and where they found was several peak periods of demand of the 250 spaces, and we're dropping down now below that. So I can get you those numbers so that you can see that. But the other piece of it, and I was not focused on this, Mr. Chairman, when we talked about it, is if we were to bring it back to the campus, what it really meant. And that's when I was explaining it was between 25 and 30 spaces that would have to be lost after you sort of do the layout.
Right.
And the like, which would then bring us below the minimum zoning requirement, which is a 2 per 1,000 requirement. So we would have, not only is it a constructability issue, a use issue, but we just don't have the spaces. I mean, I think if we were to take 27 to 30 spaces out of this plan, it's not going to function.
And it's just, I'd really like to see it, that's all. I mean, once I get my head wrapped around it, which would be great. I'm not drifting one way or another yet.
Okay,
at the moment.
that's fair.
The other thing I asked you to do was, I think we really did need to look at the entire campus that the hospital owns. We had brought that up beforehand. I had asked you to try to coordinate with staff as well too, to at least identify some of the areas that we thought were of high criticality. Right, yeah, the critical areas that we really need to look at. But as I said to you and Greg beforehand, the thing is that the opportunity that comes before the town, we won't see that ability to look at this area again for another 50, 75 years. So I think it's inherent upon us now to understand how the whole thing functions together, and for us as the town to be able to identify what those needs are for us as well too. So I'm hoping you had that conversation with him.
I did actually have the opportunity, not today, but to speak with Mr. Voris about the issues of Four Corners and both the commitments of the hospital, which has always been there as part of our filing to support the Four Corners, but also I think talk about a provision that would deal with not creating any impediments to the ability of to be able to, of that being redeveloped. And I'm sure we can work on some wording on that.
Right, because I mean, there was issues beyond Four Corners too, just with.
You really mean the Four Corners corridor, I think.
Right.
And
there you go.
I
agree with you.
Lack of a better term.
The corridor is a good way to put it at this point. 2 more things. Linda had brought up about the island in there. this little chunk of property that you had by the helipad. I'm fine with letting you guys try it. I respect what you've tried to do. You may need to put up some very minimalistic signage. And I think in the end, if it doesn't work, you'll come back before us. I think hopefully you've heard from the board that we're willing to try to work with you. But I think you've put a lot of time and energy, personally, I think you put a lot of time and energy into this. You see how it flows, and as one member of the board, I want to support you in trying to do those things. And if you need to, like I said, I think it'll be a very simple thing to change it if we need to.
I'm going to guess there are going to be some things that we've done that when it's open and running, people are going to say, it sounded like a really great idea at the time.
And that's true of anything.
No, I can have a sense that's going to be true.
Yeah, I mean, we've learned by experiences. The last thing I wanted to bring up real quickly is, can you just kind of give me an overview about your ancillary facilities, like retail sales, gift sales, food services, just so we get a...
There's going to be a 20, I talked a little bit, there's going to be a 24-seat, what I, term, lack of a better term, probably cafeteria eating area that's going to be in this area here that's going to have a porch where you're going to actually be able to, both actually patients and visitors can be able to go out and sit in the porch, because if you, to maybe go to the rendering, I might be able to actually show some of the, this area here is actually where the food service is going to be, and your ability to be able to come out there and actually sit in two areas to have a porch and a railed off area. I think their thought is there would probably be a gift shop. I can't tell you the exact program of that, but I think that'll be there. The bulk of the services are intended to be within the hospital proper. I can tell you that there are certain things that will probably be off-site. Physical therapy might be one, things like that, where we've found those to be advantageous to be off-site, and people like them to be off-site. Some may come back, some may not. But the goal is that this is a right-size facility. It's not as large as it had originally been programmed, but we think with a combination of the Anderson building, with the Founders building, and the main hospital at about 105,000, 106,000, the bulk of all the services will be on site and in the hospital.
Okay, because it would be helpful to understand some of those things, and I'd be curious, too, to know if you're going to outsource any of those as well.
Again, a lot of time was spent on the program to be able to, all of our surveys that we've done, people said, what they wanted to have, and that was probably a bigger list than we could accommodate, but really the goal is to have all of those services available in the hospital. The only one I can specifically speak to is probably physical therapy may stay off in a separate facility. I think that's going to be the one. And again, if you think about that type of use and where people want it, that probably is going to be right.
Right. Now, I'm just curious, because the reason why I bring up the outsourcing as well, too, for some other hospitals I've visited, they have had, like, McDonald's running their restaurant. That's entertaining. I'm not saying...
but we think our food's pretty good.
But I want to bring it up for the record at this point, just so that we're a little clear as a board about what's going to kind of happen there as well, too, because it can drive, it can change the way a facility runs as well. So I just would like...
I certainly, and I can't say, Mr. Chairman, it would never happen. I've not heard discussions like that. I mean, what I've heard more discussions of how can we make a great facility so we can attract people to come and stay and service the community.
Yeah.
That discussion I've heard a lot of, but not so much of because we want to farm out that service. We actually want to attract people to come and stay.
No, I understand. Again, like I said,
it's an excellent question.
I've been in other hospitals before and watched how trends have started to occur. I just want to bring it up for the record at this point so that we're a little bit clear about what...
I've not heard any discussion of Mickey D's, Burger King, or otherwise. Now, Chick-fil-A, we might have...
You'd be a hit with some people.
With some folks.
Absolutely.
That's true.
Thank you. That's great. Board members, anything else? Yeah, please.
John, you said you're going from 342 to 348. Is that on the main campus?
You mean parking spaces?
Yeah.
No, we're going from a little over 250 down to between 238 to 242.
That's on the main...
Yeah, that's on the campus.
Well, then I don't think you're reducing your parking because you're moving the foundation building across the street and giving that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Let me ask, is that 8 in there?
That's including
That, all right, I
That's
was wrong.
including
That
the
8 is in there.
foundation?
That
Okay.
includes the 8 overhead
So that
foundations.
just pulls all that traffic out of there.
Yeah.
Fine.
That 8 is in that number then. Okay. Well, thank you, Steve.
Yeah. Andrew, Leslie, did you have anything?
I just have a few things. I see, John, and I mean, I think the hospital's done a fantastic job, really pulled all of this together. I see that there's, look, I can't read it, but there's a note going to the green light. I'm assuming that reflects our discussion.
It does, but I'm happy to write it. I assume there'll be a provision that will be written in that will be appropriate.
Okay. I do think that and from our transportation planner and from our other discussions, I think following up on what Chairman Rector said is that, again, there needs to be some note that covers the possible changes to the intersection. We, as we all know, we don't have a final design, but we have a general understanding of the area and the buildings that would be affected. We talked about specifically a note that talks about, so we don't end up in a situation again where there's major investment in buildings that might be in the way of us solving, a traffic problem that affects everybody. So I think that really needs to be included. I think in terms of a note, following up somewhat on what Chairman Rector said about, there is an outsource vendors perhaps that are included, like, it's not going to be, I don't know, formula businesses that are located or something. We can talk about what that might say. I think the other thing is the subdivision across this. So I think we should expand. Again, we're doing a site plan review, so I think we should include the properties that are across Atlantic and at Sparks, because those will, at least the one at the Atlantic is affected by the roundabout.
But not as part of this site plan. I mean, I think we can add a note as, I mean, I think your issue is to be concerned about future recognition
Correct.
of development in that area. And I think as far as not impeding that and acknowledging it and acknowledging the obligation, I think we can do. As far as, I mean, they'll still be able to have to maintain and operate and deal with what they have to deal with. But.
And I'll tell you my concern is that this isn't a special permit with conditions. This is a site plan that the board signs. So the site is all of the hospital, not just, I know you're focused on this part, but those other properties do have impact here, and I think they should be included. So that's my recommendation to the board. It's up to you all.
Included in the site plan?
I do.
Now, my only concern is that they were not as filed, and we did it by assessors reference. That would be a different, that would be a different filing.
Well, we may need to do it through an addendum or an appendix or something.
Yeah, I certainly, if what you're talking about is some kind of note that we may need to, I think we could work on that.
Yeah.
I would be concerned procedurally if you said we want to add that other land. Those weren't noticed and they aren't part of the filing.
Gotcha.
So,
well, there's nothing actually happening on those yet, but again, it's an acknowledgement of what has been discussed and what has been agreed to. We're not going to be necessarily seeing you again, as was said, for a while. So somehow that needs to be acknowledged.
and I think we absolutely can do that in a note that deals with a corridor as opposed to that, because I don't think the intention was we have a residential house there and that's part of the hospital site plan approval. I don't think that was and again, that would be a very different approach than what we filed.
Well, and there's a whole other process, as you know, towards whatever eventually happens there. When no one's saying here that you're being asked to do something for free or give up land or anything else. It's that you're acknowledging that this has been discussed. So when we live through potentially other administrative groups at the hospital, there's at least some acknowledgement of that.
I think we can develop a note, and I think that note should have the commitment we made with the traffic study, the commitment to support the MassWorks grant, the commitment not to do anything that's going to impede the opportunity for the corridor to be improved. But by the same token, the hospital isn't agreeing to give up land or anything like that. It's not agreeing to give up its ability to be able to maintain its properties, sell, do whatever it's got to do. I mean, I think that's all.
Yep.
I think that's a two-sided note, but I think we can develop that.
Great.
With a sketch showing at least the assessor's level as part of the note. In other words, a note with the.
I think it reflects, it's more a narrative of the corridor, because if you're going towards what improvements might be there, I think that's a whole different set of issues.
Just submit the outline of the parcels with no.
Just a property description, I think we
Yeah.
could probably.
The properties, we know which properties.
Yeah, I mean, there effectively are two properties that are involved in that.
Okay.
I do think, too, that one thing we might just look at, too, is on the subdivision across the street, where that connects on this plan. I mean, will there be a crosswalk there? I mean, it seems like it's just off the corner of your site plan here.
Yeah, I thought when we came in with the definitive on that, if we can certainly add that there as a required improvement. I don't think we showed it as part of the site plan because it sort of came in and said, but. But I think we can make that part of the definitive, and if you want to change that, we can add something.
Okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, that's great. And our traffic planner had raised the issue of the two on the exits coming out onto South Prospect Street. Do you feel that there needs to be the split for the right and left turn? Now, this is on your site, not within the public road.
Those two right here?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that was, Jeff Dirk from Vanessa and Associates did our circulation planning, based on generation and splits. That was his recommendation. I think if the board or the planner has a particular concern with it, we can live without it. But it seemed to Jeff, based on where he had data on where people lived and the like, he thought that was a good idea. So it's.
No, we don't. It tends to be, and this was his point, that there might, it might be helpful just to do a peer review on that, which we could get done fairly quickly. It's an issue that he raised as, again, that creates a very wide opening there.
If that's of concern to people, I tell you, we'll eliminate it. I mean, it's not. It's not. I mean, we've got a traffic engineer who says it's a good idea. If people are concerned about it, we'll eliminate it.
Can I ask a question, Andrew? Would it be more constructive just to do a peer review, just so that you've got some documentation underneath it, or?
And I could also ask Jeffrey to do a memo up about why he recommended that, and if after it's reviewed, people aren't supportive of it, we'll eliminate it. That's
okay.
I don't think it's a strongly felt view of the world.
Well, I think turning it over to our traffic person here, Mike Burns, and just like I said, having that dialogue with
No, I'll call Jeffrey in the morning. I'll ask him to do a memo as to why he suggested that based on his splits, and Mike can look at it, and if he agrees, fine. If not, we'll eliminate.
Great. Okay. Does that work? Okay. Was there anything else from the board or from staff?
No, thank you.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing. I thank you for your indulgence. Is there anyone who'd like to comment on this application? Not seeing any hands raised.
Do we have to continue this again?
Yes.
Do we?
I think
Is there
you've
much,
still
you think
got
so?
you've still got some outstanding issues that I think need to be resolved here, but
Okay.
I think we're getting toward the home stretch.
Okay. Motion to continue July 11th.
Okay. Motion is made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, just for
Oh, sorry.
clarification, just so I understand,
Yeah.
I assume the continuance is to address any of these remaining issues, reviewing that intersection, the notes.
Right.
Is there anything else that the board wants us to I just want to be
Nope.
sure.
Feel like we've probably articulated, but I'm glad you're bringing it up. Go ahead.
Just for the record on that, I know I got on the cemetery thing, that's fine, that's what you're doing. But that ambulance thing that Linda brought up, I looked at that a little bit myself just now, and
The widening there?
I mean, you're building a 100-year building. I mean, this is it. We're all done. See you later. Till whatever generation.
We'll do that. We'll do that. Absolutely.
Ion will
Yeah,
be
that's
gone by the time we build another hospital. So I think you should do that because in the summertime, John, it's not going to get any less busy. That's for sure.
Okay. All right.
So
All
I
right.
think we
Steve?
should have 3
Okay.
ambulance spots and just trim some grass and kind of tweak the corner and let those wide ambulances fit in there.
Give them as much room as you can give them up there.
I think that's good. I really do.
And
So
it's, and I'm just going to
Okay.
say, I mean, I respect what they're saying, but I really think like and you may want to just check in with the rest of the board. I think you've spent a lot of time on it. I respect what you're
that's
about
not
to.
fixable though. Once it's done, that's the only.
Hold on. If you need to change that, can you change that?
Yes, we can.
There you go.
Well, we can't necessarily add 3 spaces. We can have 2, and we can widen, and I think Steve can do that. And I think that'll get us closer to where we need to go.
But give it some thought.
Absolutely. No,
I
we
think
took
that's-
that. We took those. I just wanted to be sure we knew the universe, so when we came back, we were focused, and then we can work with staff, I assume, on the notes to be sure they end up where they should. Okay. We'll look at those issues on that.
Great.
Okay, great.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So,
Did I second that motion?
yeah, the motion was made and seconded. There was discussion, which I think we've adequately vetted at this point. All those in favor, please say aye. Continuing.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Do you guys want a 5-minute break? We're at 9 o'clock. Want to keep going?
I'm good.
All right.
Roll.
Got it. Next thing before us at this point is 27-16, 7 North Water LLC, 7 North Water Street. For the applicant. Okay. Got it.
Thank you. For the applicant, 7 North Water Street LLC, Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors. This is a request for a special permit to construct a new driveway at 7 North Water Street, which is a You got me there? Yeah, that's the one. Which is 7 North Water Street, which is this property right here. It is located across from Ash Street in the vicinity of Ash Lane. This is the 5 North Water Street, which is the new theater project that's being constructed. This is an application to construct a driveway, stack 2 spaces in this vicinity here with a curb cut onto North Water Street. The application requires a special permit due to the proximity within 25 feet of Ash Street. Somewhat of a technical matter because North Water Street is a one-way in this direction. Ash Street, so when you come down Ash Street, you can't make that right turn. You can only make the left turn. So there's really no conflict when you move on Ash Street in North Water with that driveway. The DPW has signed off on the curb cut component of the application. We've been before the Traffic Safety Committee with a request to remove this parking space here. There was support from Traffic Safety on that matter. The fire department actually has a problem moving down North Water Street and up Ash Street when these cars are parked in this vicinity, so they fully recommended removing that one parking space here. The property recently sold. It was a property that had been held for some time by Sarah O'Reilly. There was actually at one point a driveway in this location, and when the town came in and did the improvements to North Water Street and created a one-way situation, Sarah made the choice at that time to block that driveway off. The gate still exists at the fence here at the back of Walk, so we're simply looking to reestablish that space. If this board is so inclined to grant the special permit, I'll have one more step in the process, which would be the selectmen to ratify the removal of that one parking space that the Traffic Safety Committee has recommended removing. And be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Board members?
No, that's good.
Good. Anything
Make-
from
Yeah.
Andrew or Leslie? No. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to comment on this? Not hearing anything?
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion's made and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have unanimously. Pleasure of the board.
Make a motion to approve the curb cut and the stack space and removal of the, even though that's not our jurisdiction, to remove that space as well, for the record.
I'll second that.
I think it's a great plan.
All right, so the motion's now made and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor,
Aye.
please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Next thing is 29-16, which is Mary G. Hurd, estate of Edward Hurd, to Lucretia Mott Lane. Mr. Reed.
Yeah, we don't need to act on this. Thank you very much. For the record, Attorney Arthur Reed. This is an application for a second curb cut. If you have the plan that was filed in front of you, that was in your packet, this involves a lot that has an existing cottage. There is another dwelling, which actually is labeled as secondary dwelling. It's second in time, but it's actually larger than the existing cottage, which is at the bottom part of your screen, the way that shows up there. The new proposed house is obviously the upper part of the screen. There's an existing parking space for the cottage right in front of it, and what we propose to do, I think, yeah, that's a little easier to follow. Thank you. Now we're east and west, and on the west, to the left, we have the proposed new house and the parking space immediately adjacent to that. Really seems to be the best way to lay out the access on this lot. It's wide and relatively shallow, and that results in there being considerable separation between the driveway entrances on Lucretia Mott Lane, which is obviously a very sparsely traveled roadway.
Yep, go ahead.
On the plan, that building is not listed as anything other than a structure. Is that a dwelling unit in that garage?
Is that what?
Is that a dwelling unit in that garage?
Yeah,
It's listed
yeah.
as structure, not dwelling.
Yeah, there's a dwelling unit in there.
Is it a dwelling unit or a bunkhouse with no kitchen?
Well, I haven't been inside it.
That's what I'm saying. It was attached to this house, Lot B. I guess that's Lot B or whatever it is. It was all one lot, and then they 41A
That's right.
and 1L'd it.
Ancillary structure.
But I don't believe there's a dwelling unit in that structure. So what's in there?
Can you come forward and, sir? Yeah, would you please come forward and identify yourself?
Because the plan should be correct.
Hold on.
I'm Alex Hurd. I'm the son.
Thank you.
There is a studio apartment on the second floor above the garage.
With a kitchen.
Has a small kitchen and a bathroom.
I don't know if that's qualified. The kitchens have a certain size now, but crazy stuff. My problem is there are very few, if any, in town with two curb cuts. Lucretia Mott is incredibly narrow. You got to want to be on that road. And where you're putting the house and where you're putting, I'm just going to throw it out there. You got a couple of hefty trees over there. Are those town trees preventing you from touching that parking space?
Two of those trees have been diseased and have actually been taken down on that lot.
That side?
The one at the corner on that east side.
Where the parking space is?
Just south of where that parking space is. And then the one that was in the middle of that Lucretia Mott line also died.
Okay, because on the aerial, they're still there.
I understand.
Okay. I'm having trouble with it. I don't even know how you get into that concrete one, frankly. I don't know how you guys have ever got into that concrete one. It's just great. But would it not make more sense not to do that anymore, and just put two right there, side by side, and get rid of the foolishness of that concrete space, which is just wonderful to try to get in and out of, and not have two curb cuts? I'm having a problem with the precedent of 2 curb cuts downtown where we normally don't do that, ever. And I know very few that have 2 curb cuts. In fact, I can't think of one in that area that has 2 curb cuts.
Well, the issue is primarily one of safety, and these are some considerable distance apart, which would indicate that there would be no problem with safety.
Well, I'm just looking at the visual and practical use of it. And I know that he doesn't want to chew up what little yard he's got left there.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm just having a little bit of a difficulty with it. I forget which direction Lucretia Mott goes.
It goes towards.
Goes that way? Goes from right to left? That again presents a problem with that one on the left because it's going to be backing out blind. And Lucretia Mott is already a pain in the butt to get up and down. So when you're backing out blind from the left side of that thing and the traffic's going this way, they're not going to see you and you're not going to see them. And there's nowhere to go on Lucretia Mott. It's like barely 12 feet wide on a good day.
But again, there's very little traffic on it anyway.
That's not the point. So that's why I'm having an issue with that second curb cut. Just a whole myriad of issues on the second curb cut. If you want to keep that crazy concrete one, go ahead. It's been there forever. But I'm having trouble with this. From a safety standpoint also.
I more or less agree with Linda. It should just be one in the middle. Abandon the concrete one.
What about leaving the concrete one and having one in the middle? Because the concrete one is more of an apron to the driveway, to the garage. I sneaky park there when I go to the Shifts Inn all the time. Sorry. And it's so simple to pull my van in there, you can get by. But it's not really a parking space. It's just an apron. The parking is to your neighbor. They got a nice big one, the house that backs up before you. So, this is a weird, these second curb cuts downtown, I go look at every one of them because of this stuff. They're none of the same. They're all different. That curbing on Lucretia Mott Lane, how far down does that 200-year-old stone and mortar thing go? Because the problem down there that I found is backing out or driving. It doesn't matter which way. Your bumper can hit that. Like, it's so tight. So you have to make it angle enough so you can get your vehicle in there without hitting that historic curbing that's on that road. I don't know how far down it goes, though. It doesn't go that far? Okay, good. All right. Jesus. There's no parking down on that road. Nobody drives on it. Delivery vehicles can park there for half an hour and no one says anything. I'm just telling you, that's how it works. But, where would you put a car? You'd have to get an in-town permit. Park on Traders Lane on the sidewalk like everybody else does on that street. I don't know what the answer is. I don't have a problem with, I don't want to say that, I'm for parking spaces or I'm against parking spaces. This is just an odd situation. You can't eliminate the thing you have because there isn't any way. You'd have to build the building bigger. What are you going to, the grass? That's crazy. So you need to, maybe in the middle instead, Arthur, instead of down the end. I don't think it matters to you. You're going to get a space. You need a space somewhere. But it matters with the building location, right?
We obviously need to have parking spaces, 2 parking spaces for the two
you're going to back in. You're going to be backing into your parking space. I can tell you that. Even if you don't know how to back up, you're going to figure it out. Because a lot of people don't like backing up, but that's what you need.
In the other spot, we can back into this.
Clarification, Barry?
Yeah, go ahead.
The front page, Arthur. I'll wait for a second.
Hold on for a second.
Yep. Arthur, this thing, the aerial, the way you have the lines drawn, don't match the site plan at all.
Huh?
That left-hand lane doesn't match. Doesn't match at all. This is squared off. That's at some sort of an angle.
Well, we didn't prepare that. That's from the.
Yeah, but the left-hand property line should match the 90-degree angles of this thing. You didn't change the left property line. The west.
That's nothing we did. Again, that comes from the.
This is GIS.
GIS.
Well, the GIS is
not
like
always
lost.
correct.
Well,
there is a little bit of an angle on it there.
Well, it gives you it does angle just a hair, see?
No, this is a straight angle. There's no straight angle on that.
See, there is an angle.
There isn't on this.
It's not square.
Okay. If you're going to do the parking space, what are you doing here? You've got something weird going on. It's like half the space. It looks ridiculous. What is your apron? Normally, an apron's not half your parking space.
If that's the sizing of the apron.
Yeah, I know, but it should be the entire. The whole thing should be brick or something. I don't care, but it looks ridiculous. I assume it's Belgian block or cobblestone or something along those lines, right?
What? The
apron?
10 by 20. Yeah.
Well, then the whole thing should be that, not just half the parking space and half shell. I've never seen anything like that in town at all. Just from an aesthetic point of view, when you have to go someplace else, keep that in mind. Yeah, good idea. I don't know.
Belgian block would be fine.
I just think you're going to have a visibility issue. You're going to put one of those little round mirrors up there because somebody's going to hit you. On the off chance somebody actually drives down Lucretia Mott.
The off chance.
Moving on.
Yeah.
Yep. So, anyone else on the board wishing to comment on this? Andrew, Leslie, do you have anything you'd like to offer at this stage?
I mean, my only comment, Mr. Chairman, would be I don't know if it's possible, for the visibility issue, if what you're showing as the proposed secondary dwelling, which is really the new primary, if that were just shifted, I guess, to the south a little so when you do back out, there's a little more visibility around the building. I don't know if that's possible. I do think it's a shame to, eat up all the area between the two buildings when that area sort of lends itself to a space. But if it were maybe more flared out at the end, and if the building were back so you could get a little more visibility around it, I don't know if that's possible.
In other words, set the building back a little bit further from Lucretia Mott and push it down into the remaining area that's outside the setback.
Well, hold on. The public hearing isn't open yet, so let me deal with the board. Are you done, Andrew? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Thank you. Go ahead.
If you guys, you'd be covering the same amount of space if you flipped the building. You mirrored the building exactly where it's sitting right now, not push it back. You flipped it so the L went that way. You know what I'm saying? The bulk of the went that way, and the parking went where the building is now. You would have no visibility problems. It would cover the exact same space left to right. You just flip it.
No, if you mirror it, she's right.
Yeah, if you just do this. So put the L part where it is, but put the fat part of the building going where the parking is right now, and just move the parking to the other side of the building. We're done.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that completely works. I understand your point, but I don't think you have room enough looking at the
well, just play with it and see if it'll
dimensions.
work. You haven't gotten the HCC yet anyway, so.
It's still, it's close.
Do you want to open? She's like.
Okay. Patience. All right.
Not my problem.
Anything else, board members? You guys good? Yep. For the moment? Okay, good. So, public hearing, ladies and gentlemen, if you please, excuse me, come forward and identify yourself for the record.
Hi, I'm Jenny Baldock, and I live immediately to the left there.
Mm-hmm.
And I go in and out of that parking every single day. I can tell you that there isn't a problem with pulling out onto Lucretia Mott. There just isn't. It's not a road that people are zipping down. So you inch out and there's no problem. I mean, we've lived there for 4 years now and never had any issue whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
I am. Yes. But we have a, our condition is similar to what that condition would be. And because because the land is up and we have plantings there, and the fence goes straight to the wall. So in fact, I would say the visibility is probably worse from our parking area than this would be, and we've had no issues whatsoever.
Do you like this plan?
Well, there's nothing about this that's great for me, obviously, but I definitely prefer this to what you're proposing, because what you're proposing is you're basically putting a very big house right on top of another house, and right on top of...
You mean if the flip?
If you flip it, you're basically creating something that feels more like New York City, with things butting right up next to each other.
You have a 5-foot setback, and that's what it's allowed to have a 5-foot setback.
I understand that, but there's 5 feet. The setback from our property, we didn't do this, is 5 feet. There's only 5 feet. So you're basically going to have 10 feet between two houses, and you're going to create this huge congestion and lack of breathability in, quite frankly, an area that has had a lot of open space historically. And I don't think, maybe this is a HDC discussion, but I don't think that's consistent with what the downtown looks like. There is... No. Even though houses are close together, there's generally green space between those houses. I mean, I live there.
Ken, hold on.
But I'm just saying,
Can
as
you-
somebody who lives
excuse me,
there,
thank you.
there is no visibility. There's no problem getting out onto Lucretia Mott, largely because it is not a wide street that people zip down. People are always kind of creeping along there. And there is not a neighbor who is, all the neighbors have been noticed, and everybody's kind of said, leave it. And we all, including the people who own the Barnacle Inn across the street, who I spoke with tonight, I mean, this is a much better scenario for them. Them, pushing the house, that's not what they would like. So, I mean, I can't really speak for them, but they didn't expect this. We expected that you would approve this.
Right. Thank you. We all set?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anyone else wishing to comment on this? Okay. Where are we standing, board members?
I think we just had the continued Belgian block or shell or something until it's consistent with one another instead of split.
No problem with that.
And I'd go along with the neighbors. Who's to argue against them?
Okay.
All right.
Anything else, board members? So what's your pleasure at this point? You've got, okay, so I think Mr. Reed is clear on the surface. Is there anything else?
No, not as far as I'm
No,
concerned.
I know. I'm turning to my board, actually. I'm
Yeah,
looking at
but
you,
you're
but I'm
looking at
sorry.
me, so.
I'm sorry. It's really more meant to reflect to them.
Right.
So, board members, what's your pleasure at this point? I have asked for other comment, and there is none to be had.
Motion to close the public hearing.
All right. That motion's now made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. And
Motion to approve with the parking area being all one surface.
I second.
Well, it should be all what particular service? It has
No,
to be
it's got to
Belgian,
go to the
right?
HDD. No, it doesn't. It can go to the HDC.
Okay,
It can
okay.
be brick, Belgian
Okay,
block,
sure.
or
Okay.
cobblestone.
Okay,
That's
okay,
up to
okay,
them.
okay. Yep.
I'll second Linda's motion.
all right, so that motion's now made and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Reluctantly.
Thank you. So that brings us to 30-16, Richard A. Treviglione, trustees of 29 Tomahawk Road Realty Trust and 27 Tomahawk Road Realty Trust, 27 and 29 Tomahawk Road.
Oh.
Mr. Brusher.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Attorney John Brescher representing the applicant. What you have before you is a special permit request for relief at both 27 and 29 Tomahawk Road. We'll go through the requests for 27 Tomahawk Road first, and then I'll discuss those for 29. For 27 Tomahawk Road, the applicant is requesting special permit relief to take advantage of the RC2 zoning freeze in the Coffin subdivision. Specifically under Section 13930A, they are requesting
special permit for a use of interior storage and warehousing per section 139.7A. Additionally, the applicant is requesting special permit relief pursuant to 139.21B2F1 for the width of the driveway curb cut to be 42 feet when the maximum is allowed to be 30 feet. And also a special permit request for a waiver of the open space requirements where the minimum is 20% open space and they're proposing 14% or 700 square feet for 27 Tomahawk. With respect to 29 Tomahawk, it's quite similar. The uses would be identical in that there would be interior storage and warehousing. Again, a special permit request for the curb cut waiver to be 35 feet instead of the maximum allowed of 30 feet, and an open space waiver request of 15% when the minimum is 20%. And just so everyone is clear, the applicant is also going to be proposing a housing unit within the structure on 29 Tomahawk Road, but as this would be under the RC2 zoning district requirements, this use is allowed by right, and therefore relief is not requested at this time. I have Art Gasparo here with me to answer any additional site plan questions, as well as the applicant. And I believe that Mr. Gasparo and Mr. Pesci have been back and forth with respect to some of the engineering concerns.
Okay. Perfect. Did you have anything, Art, you wanted to bring up, or no? We're good, right? Okay. Just want to check in. Board members, is there anything you'd like to bring up on this? Go ahead.
Did you intend to do this in one application? As opposed to two separate lots, two separate applications, so they're not tied to each other?
The intent was to do it as one,
Why?
because we were going to just have it as one collective use, I suppose.
Wouldn't be my road. Where's the parking? Because he's got a business he has to run, and he has to get his trucks in and out of there, those big barrels and the stuff that Rich does, Mr. T does. Where are you going to let him go? He needs parking. I'm not saying loading zone, but Rich has to get in and out of these buildings and load those barrels.
If I may, for the applicant, Art Gasparo, what we have, I know there's an awfully lot of lines on the plan. The driveway comes in between the buildings, and then where you see the numbers 1, 2, and 3 on each side are 3 9x20 parking spaces.
Where?
So you can pull into each of them on each building. So you basically get a lot behind the buildings. And we're proposing a retaining wall that runs along the back of the slope, exactly the same as
Everybody else
did next door. So the wall would tie straight into the one that is just to the south, and so we would have a common driveway and then sort of one large parking area that provides those 6 spaces. Additionally, that is why we've asked for the loading that you mentioned. You'll notice out towards the road on the buildings, I've labeled each of the garage doors. So, and a large apron that goes across the front of the building, and that's why we've asked for the waiver for the increased curb cut. So, given the distance from the edge of the berm to the property line, and then setting the buildings back a little bit further, you'd actually be able to pull in right in front of those buildings as well for some of that loading and unloading activity that you've mentioned in and out of his truck. So we're trying to keep it sort of flexible to allow the use along the edge of the road, and we believe it's consistent with this neighborhood.
I just want to make sure he can get in and out of the building, because I know I'm familiar with what he does, how big those things are and how heavy those things are. The only thing I personally would think would work, since it's almost the full length of both of the lots put together, is to have a different material where the driveway goes in, so it sort of separates the two major Mondo aprons. So it's not one long strip of, 100-foot long asphalt. Mm-hmm. There's some demarcation where the driveway actually goes between the two buildings, some other material or something.
Oh, I think we could make that work.
I think aesthetically it would make it look better anyway. Sort of define where that driveway is. But otherwise, you know, it is what it is, and we've done a bunch of these pole barns over there, and one after the other, and you've got the big tent guy to your north, which is a big run of a building, and then you've got Billy to the south, and keep on going. And you're doing the Jersey barriers on the back, stacked.
The blocks, yeah.
The blocks. We've already approved those a couple of times.
Yes.
Okay.
Anyone
I think
else?
asking for green space out there is going to be a little difficult.
I'm fine.
Anywhere.
Nat, you got anything? Boys are in this room. Andrew, Leslie, anything from staff perspective?
Mr. Chairman, through you, what's the depth between the front of the building and the edge of the traveled way?
I'm going to estimate it at about 16 feet or so. I don't have an exact dimension.
So
But as I look at the scale and I know that how far back we set it's probably 16 feet or so.
So it's 10-foot setback and then roughly 6 feet, you think?
Right.
Because the one, Mr. Chairman, the one
Yes.
concern would be, you know, there shouldn't be a whole lot of parking that's, you know, out into the right-of-way there.
Well, that's why we didn't try to show 9 by 20 spaces there. We were thinking that could also be a pull-in spot parallel to the building.
Okay.
Almost like your 14 by 35 loading
Gotcha.
zone
Yep.
is sort of what we had in mind.
Okay. So vehicles could come in and into the
Off
garage
the road,
area?
right, inside of the gutter line essentially,
Yep.
and given the trucks that he has, and then open a garage door,
Yep.
load and unload, was sort of what we discussed.
So you wouldn't see perpendicular parking out in front
That's
that
not
often?
the intention, I believe.
Okay.
Good. It's a public hearing, ladies and gentlemen, if anyone would like to comment on this. Not seeing any comments.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Do I hear a second? Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Motion to approve. The only condition, Andrew, was to show the difference where the driveway is from the two aprons.
Yeah.
Different material.
Yep.
I don't care if it's concrete, just something different.
You want an escrow account too?
Oh, that's,
Small escrow for the project.
Mr. Chairman, we do think
Yes.
there should be a condition about no perpendicular parking in front
Okay.
of the
Okay.
building. If they're
All right.
parking within their lot lines, that's one thing, but not in a way that goes out into the right-of-way.
Okay.
got it.
And then a condition about a final sign-off by Ed Pesci.
Okay.
Good enough? All right. That's all there is. Motion was made and seconded for discussion. Yep, thank you. Motion was made and seconded for discussion. Beyond that, not hearing any. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have unanimously. Great.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
gentlemen. No problem. 31-16, A&AD Associates LLC on 4B Bartlett Road. Ms. Alger.
Yes, sir. Alger for the applicant. This is a property at 4.5 Bartlett Road. We're not proposing any exterior changes. We're taking the interior of the existing building. It's being used now as a doctor's office. We would like the ability to do a lab in the basement where what do you call them? Specimens could be looked at, little biopsy things looked at by the doctor under a microscope, and equipment sterilization, some storage, and then also an employee break room. Excuse me?
Down there.
There's an
There's an
interior
inside.
set of stairs.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we add that, we come up with a required 17 parking spaces, where 13 are provided, 9 are on site, and 4 are by easement on an adjacent property. So we're asking for a waiver of the additional required parking spaces. We're not adding any people or really any additional traffic to the building.
Yeah.
the people using the lab are going to be the visiting doctors that are using the upstairs
Yeah,
anyway.
it's for Dr. Qureshi, his
Yeah.
operation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no problem.
Okay. Any other one on the board? Andrew,
Fine.
Leslie, we good here?
Whatever.
We're good? Yeah. Public hearing is open if anyone would like to comment on this.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed?
Motion to approve.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Thank you very much.
Ayes have unanimously. Thank you. Brings us to 32-16, Donald T. Visco and Phyllis J. Visco as trustees of the Visco Family Nominee Trust, 10 Tomahawk Road. Howdy.
Steve Visco for the applicant. Similar to the other things that's been going on, looking for relief by special permit under the RC2 zone.
Okay. Board members, do you have any questions for me? Yeah. I think we're all good. Andrew, Leslie, we good? Ladies and gentlemen, it's a public hearing. If anyone would like to comment on this, not hearing any comment. Oh, all right. So sorry.
I believe it's 30 at the maximum. How the driveway entrance there.
But you're
right. Yeah, right in front of the doors. It's
Okay.
under the RC zone.
Motion to close the public hearing.
All right, good. Motion's now made and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have unanimously. And
Motion to approve. We have to do a little Ed Pesci thing on this too for the runoff, Leslie?
No.
Okay.
This is just minor site plan review.
Okay. Motion to approve.
discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have unanimously. 33-16, Farrow's 17 Broad Street LLC. Hello again.
Hello, Sarah Alger for the applicant. Paul Santos is with me as well. I guess I could say there are three categories of things that we're here for. One is for an extension of the time to do work from June 15 to whenever you think is appropriate. The work that we have left to do in the exterior is very limited. There's a little bit of hardscaping, some landscaping, which I'm not sure falls within the prohibition, exterior painting. There's a fence that needs to be constructed along the side with the property at 4 North Water, and a little bit of exterior trim. That's the work that needs to be done, exterior.
So,
and we have a prohibition that stops us from working after June 15, so
when do you anticipate being done, Sarah? Roughly.
I would, well, we're hoping within the next 2 weeks, but,
Okay.
I mean, and I would say we wouldn't work at all on Sundays, and whatever hours you think are appropriate in town. But I know things are going to start to get busy as we get closer, and we certainly aren't proposing to do any work after the end of June.
So with the painting, no scaffolding or anything, just ladders, right? At worst.
Right, and we have to put up some shutters too.
Okay.
The shutters are not different colors, by the way.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Said chill. They just put them up, they photoshopped them, and they took them down.
Exactly.
All right, so board members, any thoughts here? That's pretty
So
straightforward.
that's the first piece.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Right? Okay. So then the second piece is that the open space requirement in town changed. There no longer is a required open space. I think we've been dancing on the head of a pin trying to keep our open space at the required 30%.
Oh,
Since that requirement no longer exists, we'd like that to be, it's actually not specifically referenced in our application or our approval, but I think it's shown on our plans. We would like that requirement obliterated. I think it looks really nice. We've done a ton of landscaping, but a lot of it's hardscaping and doesn't tend to help with the open space.
No, just the brick for the 10%.
Yep.
Whatever.
Right. So that's number 2. And
All
then
right.
number 3 is we would like, I guess, to know if you're satisfied with the work that we've done in lieu of the $10,000 contribution for streetlight repair, tree planting, and sidewalk improvements, because we've reconstructed the sidewalk on the 2 sides of our property. We've gotten a license from the town and done plantings in the sidewalk as well as tree planting. And we've planted trees also along North Water Street.
So Andrew, Leslie, you
The streetlights, are they working? Are all the streetlights working, do we know?
Around our site?
Yeah.
I don't know, but if you want to say that we have to make them all working, I'm perfectly happy to do that.
Fine.
was there anything else on that?
No, I think the quality of the work that they've done is what we were looking for. They did the work rather than give the town money to do the work. They did the work themselves, and I think it's come out very well.
The sidewalk looks beautiful, I think. But
I think so.
Great. Board members, do you have any questions or concerns? No?
I'm fine with all of it.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, public hearing, if anyone wants to comment.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Do I hear a second? Second. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Motion to approve.
Well, you got to set
Get
a
a set,
date.
yeah.
June 30th and a time.
June 30th?
yeah, that's
Times.
fine.
And what times did you guys have concerns about? I mean, what are we standard
8 to 5.
normally?
We didn't do that the last time. We didn't do that.
Except from the back, there's no
Well,
outside.
that's
except
why
from
I'm
the
kind of
rear.
looking at
Yeah,
Andrew.
we didn't do that the last time.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm painting, the main concern is usually, nail guns and things
Right,
making.
right.
Yeah, I'm not putting any hours
Most
on
of
this.
what they're talking about is very,
Quiet stuff.
and the fact is we want them to finish their painting and do all that stuff. So
Okay.
I
So-
think that, I think we should let them work later to get it done.
I
They're going to
get,
quit anyway.
right. So you raised the issue, but I think we're going to close the issue.
Okay.
That's how it sounds.
Motion to approve.
And can we
go
clarify,
ahead.
landscaping, like ongoing landscaping maintenance, does not fall under this prohibition, right? It's
No.
just mostly
This
hardscape?
is not the town.
It's construction stuff.
It was construction, yeah.
Landscaping and maintenance is not construction.
It just comes up
Right.
during these special permits.
Okay.
So my
All right.
motion is to approve with June 30th as the
that there was
drop
no-
dead date, basically.
Got it.
Yeah.
Second discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, ayes have unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a sketch plan from Linda J. Bellevue, trustee, 70 Milestone Road. Mr. Reed.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Let's see if we can get, well, yeah, that's the plan. Is there any way you could make it all fit on the screen, or? Yeah, there we go. My client, Linda Bellevue, who's here, owns 2 lots that are, separated by the dashed line as shown on that plan, 2 land court lots.
Yep.
They were subdivided by the previous owner on the basis of frontage on Milestone Road, with the lot that she has, with the rear lot, with her house on it, accessed from the proprietor's road, but getting its frontage from Milestone Road using frontage averaging and with a 50-foot corridor coming out to Milestone Road. What we are proposing to do is to change that line around as shown on this plan so that you would have both lots able to get their frontage as well as access from the proprietor's road. We think it's a better layout of the 2 lots. We think that for the front lot to be getting a separate access, which it would be entitled to do from Milestone Road, would be a very poor idea, obviously. Would require a state permit in any event. But in any event, we are coming in here to ask what you would require, if anything, by way of any improvements to the proprietor's road, on the basis that that would then provide the frontage for this A&R plan. I mean, we could move the lot line around in any event as being simply a matter of moving the line between two existing lots. But the change in the frontage and the need for both lots to maintain frontage is what brings us in here to ask about the point of doing this plan and having both lots receive their access from the proprietor's road.
Yeah.
And their frontage from the proprietor's road.
I don't have a problem with it so long as you move the road inside the proprietor's way layout.
We kind of thought
But it's
you might
wandering
look at it
over
that
there to
way.
the east a little too far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that's been that way for a long time, but, you know, once again, it's appropriate for the roadway to be.
Well, especially if you're
moved.
trying to take frontage off it, so
Yeah.
we just got to get there from here.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think it's fine. Does it have an apron onto, or is it just dirt right up to Milestone Road? Okay, so you got some Belgian block or something that goes on to the proprietor's road?
Come on down.
Okay,
and
that's
just-
fine.
Okay.
As long as there's something. I'm done.
Board members, anything?
So you already have your state curb cut for the proprietor's road, Arthur?
Well, it's been there. I mean, we're not.
This is nothing new.
There's nothing new. I mean,
Well, it is a requirement.
It is definitely a requirement. And
Hate to bring it up.
yeah.
The boat wasn't even in New Bedford yet when that was
Yeah.
No, the state's a pain about those. though.
You're right. You're right, though. They are.
So we would do the work to get the roadway within the layout, and
Yeah.
then come in with the A&R plan to do it.
I'm fine.
Okay. See, I think you have your sense of direction then.
Certainly do. Thank you very much.
Beautiful. Okay, next thing before us is. Sorry?
Do we have to approve?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So, do you guys want to?
I'll make a motion
The chair to send a.
to send a letter.
Oh no, I'm sorry. What?
Yeah,
I'm
it's
thinking.
not
I'm
a-
sorry. No. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So, Koppelman and Page. Andrew, do you want to talk about that for a few moments? I think you've. I think you've. Hopefully, you've all read it.
All right, so this item has been pending on the planning board agenda for a long time.
Yeah.
Joe brought it up. We submitted a request for legal services to Kopelman and Page, and basically it says that, in their opinion, the planning board has discretion to accept whatever plans they want to accept because it's not your authority to, concern yourself with the unlicensed practice of surveying, that's for the State Board of Registration of Professional Engineers and of Land Surveyors.
That's not how I read that.
No?
What I read was he did not opine whether or not those plans would be in compliance with he didn't give an opinion on that. He gave an opinion that yes, the board was allowed to.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
He didn't say that we ought or that one ought not.
Right.
No, that's fine.
He said you're not responsible for enforcement and that the planning board's established practice of permitting sketch or concept plans is within its authority.
All right. Well, what I say is different. So.
Okay.
But I appreciate that.
Well, I mean, I was the one who asked staff
No,
to
I
move it
appreciate
forward
that-
so that
no.
we were all on the same page and it didn't become a sticking point, at least
Well-
so that we're all clear about where we're heading.
Well, that letter didn't do it for me.
Okay.
Chairman, could I be heard on the subject?
Sure.
Sure, Mr. Reed. We like listening to your comments at times. please.
Thank you. I don't have any question of the planning board can, its discretion, take in.
Here, just jump on the microphone. Yeah, please.
I didn't realize we were still. Yeah,
You have no idea about our viewership, though.
Yeah.
All right. Anyways, I'm sorry.
No,
Please, Arthur.
no question. The planning board is the judge of what plans it can take in, and that's fine. And I agree that you're not the enforcement authority on this. And I think that in the past, the Board of Registration has made it pretty clear that the preparation of plans, of what are basically survey plans, is limited to registered professional land surveyors. But again, that's not the point. The point that I would make is that the applicant does himself a tremendous disservice by not engaging a registered professional land surveyor to prepare any plan that involves any dimensions that are going to deal with zoning compliance or other compliance with legal requirements. The number of cases that I've been involved in where we have had to go and get zoning relief, where other things have happened, buildings have had to be moved, much angst has taken place because people try to save a nickel by not hiring a surveyor, and the result of that is that it costs them many dimes. It is foolish, and I strongly feel that all applicants should be urged in the most strong and effective manner to get properly drawn, properly dimensioned plans that people can then follow and work with, and there shouldn't be any issues if they do that. And I do think that, as I mentioned, the Board of Registration had written a pretty strong letter on this about 25 years ago, and I would hope that they might want to pick up on this to some extent in the future. I mean, you have things like survey plans and land court plans that some unqualified, unlicensed, unprofessional person has marked up without even taking off the page the land court information or the surveyor's stamp. And it makes it look like the surveyor has prepared a plan which is in fact completely bogus. Enough said.
Can I have a comment on that?
That's okay. I've got
Arthur, I'm not going to make some poor guy, year-round guy, struggling, who wants to put in a new driveway, go get a surveyor twice, or even the first time. I don't need a surveyed plot plan to say, oh, your driveway's over there, cool, you got access. I don't care about the surveyed plan. If you're talking about something like a subdivision, much more critical issues, I can understand that. We've got to have a surveyed plan. But if you're talking about another guy who's going to put a secondary dwelling on his lot, I'm not asking him to do a surveyor twice. And here's a building over here. Whether it meets zoning and all that other stuff is not our problem for secondary dwellings. They can go deal with the building department when they ask for it. I'm not going to force somebody into doing something I don't have to. If it's a very complicated issue, you betcha we're going to get a surveyed plan because we need the surveyed plan. But there's levels of where you need it and levels where you don't.
I would agree with that, but but in any case where the dimensions make a difference, you're not doing anybody a favor by not making them get it.
We got that. Anytime that requires dimensions, we got to have it.
Mr. Santos.
Thank you. For the record, Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors. So I completely echo Arthur's sentiments. I mean, Lindo, the driveway is one thing, but when you're talking about lot area, setbacks, the work has to be done ultimately when the as-built is determined. Right. So you're paying up front for what you're going to pay for at the other end anyway. If I do the second dwelling and I do everything, when I do my as-built, this cost saving is already there. Right. So you're doing a disservice to the applicants. As Arthur said, just the other day, zoning board meeting, and listen to the litany of people who come in and say, well, this is in the wrong spot, the area wasn't right, the ground cover wasn't measured correctly, and you listen to all these things at the ZBA because the work wasn't done up front.
I'm not, if anything that requires dimensions, I'm right there with you, because it's just
Well,
going to be a
that's the whole
problem.
purpose of the second dwelling. It's setbacks, ground cover. They don't even get the 20% difference right sometimes.
I do that with people every day.
But that's different. You're doing that, Linda. You understand it. It's the guy who picks up the plan and hand draws it himself and comes in. I mean, I'd love to wire my house myself, but I need an electrician. The building department's not going to say, to save money, let this guy, let the plumber not do the work. Let the electrician not do the work. What's the difference?
You should see this.
And it's nothing about it's protecting a job. I'm telling you, it's not about the money. It's not about protecting the work. It's the service to the person who doesn't know better up front when they're sitting with Arthur at the ZBA explaining why the building's in the wrong spot and the ground cover doesn't work.
You should see this stuff at the
You charge for those
HGC.
ZBA appearances, don't you, Arthur?
I do.
All right.
I think I charge more than.
This is a beautiful philosophical. Time on. We're getting a little off target. It's a beautiful philosophic debate, but quite frankly, we are not the enforcement board here. Okay, people are going to do what they want to do, even given the best advice. You can't force them to do it. Just like in my pharmacy. Just hold on. This is like in my pharmacy when they come to me. I can't force them to do anything. Now, half of them wind up in the ER anyways when they fail to listen. But nonetheless, I understand what you're saying, and it would be good if they took everyone's advice, and I think we all try to do that as much as possible. But you're asking us to enforce that issue, and I think that's a different thing. I really do. So, yes, I do think you're asking us to make an enforcement value here where even where it's just not required. It is not required. So what are you going to do with these people? If they choose not to do it, even you guys are the experts, and they choose not to follow your advice, now what? Now what do you do?
But why bring it to that? If your regulation is the plan has to be signed, it's not left up to an opinion. They have to submit a plan. That's the regulation.
Yeah, but that would be a regulation that this board alone would be imposing, and I, for one, am a little concerned about that. Andrew?
Mr. Chairman, one of the things that was answered by this is that the planning board's established practice is acceptable and does not run afoul of any law.
Right.
And you did ask that question.
No.
You
He
did.
said it did not run afoul of any law. And then in the later paragraph, I mean, I didn't memorize this, but in the later paragraph, it says something like, please notice that I did not opine whether or not it was appropriate for the board of registration stuff. So that means it does not run afoul of any law, except I'm not giving my opinion about this.
But excuse me, at the very
But,
end.
I'm not a lawyer, but I can write you a legal opinion that'll.
He does finish with,
Yeah.
therefore, in my opinion,
Yeah.
the planning board's established practice of permitting a sketch or concept plan is within its authority.
Right.
So he does give a final opinion.
No, that the planning board could take it in.
And Mr. Chairman, could I finish?
Yes, please.
You know, in a perfect world, yes, it would be great. But I mean, and I know it's not about the jobs because there's not enough surveyors to provide the work that we need. Okay, so I don't really think that, I think this question was asked and answered. If you on the board want to change your practice, go ahead. I want you to understand that from our staff perspective, our recommendation is absolutely not. There are all kinds of changes that are made we see the second dwelling at a very early stage. And there's all kinds of changes that typically happen through the HDC, through the sewer connections, figuring that all out. And nobody gets a building permit around here without a surveyed plan that goes into the file. And if they do, I'd like to hear about it.
Well, we could go. I don't want to.
They don't.
I don't want to go.
They don't. They don't get a building permit
For the
unless
applicant?
they don't get a building permit from our building department unless there's a surveyed plan in the file.
Showing the proposed building?
Well, at least at least.
What the requirement is that you have a survey, which is usually just a vacant lot. That's.
And don't they check? They have to pin the foundation when it's done. They do a foundation inspection. There's a certified plan.
After, yeah.
Let's let him.
Well, yeah, when the
just let him
when the
finish.
foundation
Please.
is, and if there's a condition that has to be addressed, there's a procedure to deal with it.
Well,
They're taking the wrong.
I don't know who we're saving here. I know I heard that, but
I mean, you know, I know that I'm not going to change anybody's mind. So there's no sense us really arguing about it, and you're not going to change my mind. So, yeah, I appreciate that you got the letter and all. And
Yeah.
it was nice. Thank you.
Well,
You know, but it doesn't convince me.
and that is and that's fine. People are entitled to their opinions. They really are. It's a free society. The last time I checked. Okay.
So
Is there any?
Are we still voting on this?
There is no vote to be had.
There's no
Okay,
vote.
it says
It was-
vote for accepting a non-survey plan.
Well, no,
Was-
they're just going to continue the same practice. I'm,
Right.
you know, that's
can we move on?
yeah. Moving on.
Okay.
10 o'clock.
Was there anything else?
Do we have to actually withdraw the theater?
I thought you did.
Did you need a technical withdrawal on that?
I suppose so.
All right.
To allow the withdrawal without prejudice of the theater application.
And what was the verbiage you had, Andrew, which should go with it? I'm sorry, I forget. My apologies.
It's regarding the enforcement.
Right.
For the temporary CO? Right, that it's withdrawn and that the board agrees to the issuance of the temporary CO.
We good?
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Okay. All right. Next thing before us is the 40B on 106 Surfside Road.
Do we have a draft letter or anything on that?
We're supposed to do that at this meeting. Can we just move it to July?
Have to continue.
And
All right.
we'll continue for the July meeting.
Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, there's nothing on the FYI regarding, it's just to let you know that that had happened. And in regard to Senate Bill 2311, that did pass.
Good.
So
Is that the one about the surveys?
this is about the Zoning Reform Act, which has been discussed since 1989. This is a landmark that it passed one house or one division of state government. It is on to the House. And then it would, no, it passed the Senate,
Still.
and it now goes to the House. I don't know that it's really going to make it all the way this year, but it was important that it passed one group, which
Right.
it did. So, and the board has been in favor of that. The zoning board, planning board, and NP and EDC have been historically supportive of it.
Is this going to change the 3 to 2?
The main thing, it would change the special permit. It would move that to a majority.
Yeah.
What about variances? They were ahead in that.
Variance, I believe, is the same thing.
Changes the
What issues?
criteria. Yeah. Does it
Go on,
change
please.
3 to 2? For variance.
Right. And it could potentially change the vote at town meeting to majority as opposed to
You have to vote.
two-thirds, but
It keeps it at 2/3. That the default position
Thank you.
remains 2/3. So,
which we like.
right.
But we get to pick certain parts of this building, the A&R things and stuff like that.
Correct.
Was there anything else, ladies and gentlemen? Okay.
Second.
Thank you all.